sort of legend associated with the place. What was it? It had something to do with a previous hero defeating a monster and sealing it away. I remembered that they'd made some kind of attraction out of the site. Do you have a sketch of the mansion they took Mel to? We know someone that has been there many times. Maybe you could listen to their description of the place and make a map of sorts. That was a good idea. Better to trust those who had already been there. Shortly afterwards, I had a simple map in my hand. The mansion was 3 stories tall, and built around a central courtyard. They said that Melty was probably being held in a room near the back of the 2nd floor. Got it. I'm sorry about all this. We're leaving now. Philo, Raftalia, let's go. Okay. Yes. The owner of this mansion, nice guy, had been taken too. I didn't want to put him in any more danger than he already was. What could I do? I couldn't let them know that he had helped us. I'd have to say that we had come to take Melty from him. I'd have to get them to think that nice guy had somehow taken Melty from us. If I couldn't convince them, they might torture him to death. This town had a reputation in Melremark for being full of demi-humans. I had to do what I could to protect it. A few moments later, and we were chasing after the carriage that had taken Melty. Damn. The demi-humans around Nice Guy's town were out in the streets and agitated. Nice Guy must have meant a lot to them. If I told them all that I was the shield hero, they might have jumped in to help, but at the same time I didn't want to involve more people than necessary. Besides, if it became common knowledge that Nice Guy had been harboring us, he'd only end up in worse trouble than he already was. If I went with just Raftalia and Philo, the small size of our group would give us flexibility and speed, both of which were necessary if we wanted to stand a chance of saving Melty. Soon enough, I was riding on Philo's back, and we had jumped over the wall and snuck into the neighboring town. Luckily, thanks to Raftalia's magic, we'd been able to deepen the darkness of night and sneak in undetected. Think it's that big mansion over there? There was a large hill in the center of town, and a large mansion stood on the top of it. It only seemed natural that the governor would live there. Yeah, that's got to be it. Raftalia silently nodded. What's wrong? It's nothing. Raftalia was definitely acting strange. I didn't notice the last time we passed through here, but now I'm sure. What do you mean, big sister? We were still perched on the wall around town. Raftalia was glaring at the mansion. She looked very agitated. I'll make it darker. Then we should hurry up and make our approach. If we don't hurry, who knows what will happen. Raftalia cast a spell to darken our surroundings, and we made our way to the mansion by jumping from roof to roof. I couldn't be sure that no one had seen us, but then again, who walks around town at night looking up at the roofs? It doesn't look like any of the town guards have noticed us yet. You think they would be on closer guard, considering the situation with the princess? I think it is because, at night time, these nobles do things that they can't tell others about. Even if they heard that you were approaching, I doubt they'd be able to respond very quickly. What are you talking about? What do you know? Yes, this town is different from other places. The nobility here don't want the guards to keep too close of a watch. Are you talking about what happened when you were a slave? Yes. Raftalia silently nodded. This nobleman, he was the one that had tortured her. The one who had finally broken her spirit. If a guy like that had his hands on Melty, who knows what he was capable of? Did you hear that, Philo? If we don't hurry, Melty will be in trouble. Yeah, let's go save her. On Philo's back, we jumped over the mansion's fence. Woof, woof. Monsters that had been raised to guard the premises have noticed a strange smell on the wind. They were basically oversized guard dogs. They were called Guardia. They were black creatures with fangs like wolves. There was some kind of device on their backs that emitted a noise like a whistle. Their barking and the whistling were enough to alert the dullest of guards to our presence. Shut up. Woo. A Guardia came running for us, but Philo reared back and kicked it across the face. It flew through the air, silent. Philo was taking out monsters quicker than they could bark. It was kind of scary. What was that? Drawn by the noise, a guard came running. What the? Hey. I'm sorry. Please be quiet. Raftalia quickly jammed the hilt of her sword into his stomach, knocking him out. Everyone seemed perfectly accustomed to what they were doing. We were like robbers, master. We have to hurry. We got a quick sketch of the place, but, Raftalia, do you know your way around? All I really know is the basement. Do you think they are keeping Melty there? Raftalia said nothing but shook her head. This nobleman was the kind of person who took joy from the torture of demi-humans. If he had access to the second princess of Melrimark, would he torture her? The answer seemed clear, yes. We had to find some way into the building. I stopped to think. Our immediate goal was rescuing Melty. There were no other heroes around. Any soldiers of the crown that happened to be in the area should be easy enough for us to take care of. Or so I was thinking when the gate of the mansion swung open. A large group of guards came rushing out. What's that? Philo, do you see? In response to Raftalia's question, Philo rose up onto her toes and turned to the crowd of guards. Behind us, at the wall surrounding the town, I could see the flickering light of torches, and smoke was rising from the town gate. Huh? Are they, fighting? Who's fighting who? The demi-humans and the soldiers? So the demi-human adventurers were so upset that Nice Guy had been taken they teamed up and came after him. The soldiers mistakenly believed that I was leading them. I had to find some way to put this situation to use. Perfect timing. All the soldiers have come out and are running to the battle at the gate. Before they can come back, we are going straight through the front door and saving Melty. Yeah. Huh? Mr. Nofumi, are you sure we shouldn't sneak in? We can take these soldiers. They're weak. You know we can take them. Both Raftalia and Philo were at level 40, and that was the highest level they could get her without going through a class-up ceremony. But I had seen the soldiers fighting during the wave. They were not nearly strong enough to defeat Raftalia or Philo. If they came after us, we'd take them out. If they attacked the mansion, we'd take them out. We need to have the first move. Think about it. We are running away from the crown to meet with the queen. If none of the heroes are nearby, we can get away with causing a little fuss. That makes sense. Okay, let's go. Boing. At my signal, Philo bounded forward, kicked out a window, and jumped into the house. Don't hold back, Philo. Just keep charging. You can knock down the walls if you have to. Still, we needed to go slow enough to make sure we found the room where they were keeping Melty. The sketch seemed to indicate that she'd been on the second floor, but that could be wrong. Philo, you just keep breaking things. Raftalia and I will keep looking for Melty. Okay. Philo turned left and charged down a hallway. I turned to the courtyard, ran through it, and made for the second floor. On my way through the courtyard, I noticed a strange builder of sorts. What was it? Some kind of gravestone? Who would put a gravestone in their garden? This guy had issues, granted. He tortured people in his basement for fun. There was no use in trying to understand him. I could hear Philo crashing through the house. Now we just had to wait and see how the nobleman would respond. If he noticed the excitement, what would he imagine the cause to be? Sure, he might deduce that it was the shield hero coming after him to take back Melty. If that's what he thought, he'd probably make a hostage of her. The other possibility he might think of was that the demi-humans were revolting after he took Nice Guy. If that's what he thought, he'd probably make a hostage of Nice Guy. It was like we were participating in the demi-human revolt. Sure, once he saw Philo he would figure it out soon enough. Mr. Nofumi, over here. Raftalia had made it through the courtyard and was pointing to a hallway. There was a door at the end of it. This door leads down to the basement. Do you think he's keeping Melty down there? No, but he might be keeping a captured slave down there. Do you think we have the time to save him? It will only make more trouble. But still, if there was a slave down there, they were definitely demi-human. Before she met me, Raftalia experienced true horrors down there. I heard about the terrible things he'd done. She must have wanted to save her past self, her old friends. We didn't have the time, but if we could free them, we might be able to save a life. At least that's what I thought Raftalia was thinking. Fine, but we have to save Melty first. The enemy probably knows that we are here. Okay. There was a loud crash, and a series of explosive booms. What was Philo getting up to, Mel? Philo's voice was echoing through the mansion. Yeah. No one was going to give Philo any trouble, considering that the other heroes weren't around. I figured it was safe to assume that Philo could handle herself. Take care of the intruders. A few guards were running for us. They looked ready for a fight. There, the shield demon. Tell the governor. Raftalia. Yes. She drew her sword and ran for the guards. I followed her. The foolish guards drew their swords and came after me. I was currently using the Chimera Viper shield. As the shield hero, I didn't have the ability to attack, but I was able to use counter-attacks. The Chimera Viper shield had a counter effect called Snake Fang, medium. It meant that whenever successfully blocking an enemy's attack, the snake on the shield would animate and sink its fangs into the enemy. It also poisoned them. Damn, that shield is so hard. Is it moving? Arg. As I just explained, the snake on my shield lashed out and bit deep into the soldier who'd attacked me. Once poisoned by Snake Fang, medium, you had to be careful. If you weren't, the poison could kill you. You better get the hell out of here and find yourself some antidote. If you don't, that'll kill you. That's what you got for assuming I couldn't hurt him. Ugh. Damn the shield demon. The other soldiers picked up their poisoned comrade and backed away. I could have gone after them and taken them down, but our goal was saving Melty, not killing soldiers. Nice guy had only been protecting Melty. The shield hero had nothing to do with it. But that was getting harder to believe by the minute, especially now that the Demir humans nice guy fought for were revolting. Still, I had to do what I could. I turned on the fleeing soldiers and shouted at them like a madman. Where is Princess Melty? And don't even think about lying to me. I don't care if she's here or there, but mark my words. We're taking her back. The soldiers agreed to take us to Melty. When we got there, Philo was locked in a death stare with the plump nobleman. The fat guy was holding a knife to Melty's throat. He held her tight against himself so that Philo couldn't get any closer. Nice guy was collapsed on the floor between them. He looked like he had been tortured. Melty looked like she had been crying. This guy was evil. Governor. You fools, who told you to bring the shield demon here? You've betrayed me. Aren't you haughty? Philo had apparently made it all this way by herself, so he couldn't have had many guards. Mel. Philo, stay back. I made up my mind. This man, he's going to take me to meet with my father. Do you think he will really take you there? Melty was silent in response to my question. Had this guy been a healthy person, he might have kept his promise, but how could I forget that? When he loaded her into his carriage, he said everything was in accordance to God's plan. He was probably a fanatic. The national religion in Melremark was the Church of the Three Heroes, and they were the ones who'd had me framed. If I gave Melty's idea credence for a second and assumed that the king really didn't know what had been happening, how would he behave when he found out? And if this guy was part of the church, then it was doubtful he was really going to take her straight to the castle. Ha, 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 I dare you to take a single step. This knife might slip into the princess's throat. So we're okay as long as we don't take a step? What? Airstrike shield. I sent the skill so that the shield appeared between the nobleman and Melty, forming a wall. WH. Now. Yes. The shield had forcibly separated Melty from the nobleman. Noticing the small gap, Philo immediately ran over to him and planted a firm kick into his groin. Arc. The fat man flew backwards and slammed into the wall. Raftalia. Yes. In a flash, Raftalia was at Melty's side. She checked to make sure that Melty was unharmed. Finish the job. Take him out. Mr. Nofumi, I completely understand how you feel, but I believe we should first see to Melty and the other man's wounds. Philo has taken care of the fat man for now. Has she? Yeah, I held back a little because Mel was so close, but that fat guy is kind of strong. He was a nobleman after all. He had probably gone through the class-up ceremony. I ran to Nice Guy's side. He had wounds. I immediately began chanting healing spells over him. Then I held him close and pulled him up, whispering into his ear, I'm sorry, we've brought you so much trouble. Remember, you had nothing to do with us. If they find out that you helped us, they might torture you further. Sorry for everything. Don't worry. That man, he had no intention of letting me live. I am just happy that the Demir humans have this chance for freedom. Oh. I negotiated all that I could. Please stop it. Good. I wasn't planning on crying myself to sleep anyway. Still, once word got out that I'd raised a hand against a Melramark nobleman, that would only put me in a worse situation than I already was. I still held out hope that Ren and Itsuki would eventually figure out the truth. In the meantime, I really wasn't happy about being vilified even further than I already was. The guards looked over at the fat man and made various expressions of shock. I finished my first aid work on Nice Guy and helped him to his feet. He turned to Melty and smiled at her. Both Princess Melty and the shield hero have treated me so kindly. Of course there was nothing to those rumors about you. If you hang out with us, you'll only get wrapped up in more of these bad situations. I didn't need any other party members. He was clearly not skilled in battle, and it's not like I was all-powerful. I couldn't guarantee his safety. I understand. I will simply rely on my connections to keep me hidden and safe until all of this blows over. Good idea. Excellent. It was a relief to hear him say that. I'd been worried that we had ruined his life. Raftalia checked to make sure that both Melty and Nice Guy were okay, and then she turned and glared at the collapsed nobleman. Her tail stood on end, and it was clear to Philo, Melty, and I that she was livid. How could you do this to me? Torture is not a suitable punishment for your like. I'll see to it that you pay with your very lives. All the Demir humans who have died at your hands could say the very same thing. Raftalia said it coolly. She slipped her sword from its scabbard. Could they? The disgusting creatures. They aren't even human. They sneak into my town. It's like they are begging for death. Yes, that's how it was. That's the sort of man you were. Huh? Do you know me? That's right. I remember you. You're that slave I disposed of. Yes, we spent a lot of time together. Hey, and look at you now. You've teamed up with the shield demon. I can still remember your crying face, your shouts of pain. They brought me so much satisfaction. Now I see. You've come back to me. You wish to taste desperation again. No. Raftalia turned back to look at me. Then she returned her gaze to the nobleman. Her sword appeared to be softly glowing. She had an illusion sword. She was able to hide herself, appearing behind the enemy to attack. She had an attack like that anyway. But her sword seemed to be pulsing with another power altogether. I'm not a strong enough person to help you, Mr. Nofumi. That's why I never rid myself of this need for revenge. I had warned her before, but I had never stopped her. She was always a very kind girl, but I'd known for a while that something wasn't quite right. That's it. I'd completely forgotten. Raftalia had wanted to get revenge on someone. If she wanted revenge, I wanted to help her. I wanted to help. Even if it wasn't right, even if it wasn't the ethical thing to do, I wanted to stand on Raftalia's side. That day, that time when Bitch and Motoyasu and Trash were all against me, when everyone was blaming me and hating me, she'd stood up for me. She'd protected me. She'd saved me. And now the man that hurt her was right there in front of me. I couldn't forgive him. I'm not like you, Mr. Nofumi. I can't protect anyone. I know that nothing I do will bring back my village, but She pointed her sword at the fat man. If I don't stop you right now, then what happened to me and Rafana will happen to other children. I cannot let that happen. Hey, so the Demir human turns her human form and protected Melty. Nice Guy ducked under the swinging whip too. Damn. The room was small enough that he could cover most of it with that whip. Arc. The whip accidentally connected with one of the guards. His armor warped dramatically before he threw up blood and collapsed to the floor. It was just a whip, but it seemed to have an enormous attack power. We'd better avoid it. Governor? What are you doing? Kill the shield demon. Why? Yes, sir. The guards came running at us. Raftalia swung her sword wide, and they fell. You're in my way. Raftalia turned and dodged the whip. Then a guard thrust his sword at her, defending with her own sword. She turned, twisted, and then flicked her wrist. The guard's sword went flying and stuck itself into the ceiling. While the guard was processing his newly emptied hand, Raftalia delivered a roundhouse kick to his stomach, and he flew into his master. "You worthless trash. If this were a war zone, you'd be dead." The nobleman was clearly agitated now. He kept swinging his whip and trying to hit Raftalia, but she dodged it and turned her sword on him. Arc! She dodged the whip, but it continued to swing in an arc before getting caught on the leg of a table. It swung there, turning, and the tip flew toward Raftalia's back. He really knew how to use the thing, to use it in such a small space, and then to use tricks like that. He obviously had a lot of experience with the whip. Nice dry airstrike shield. I read the trajectory of the whip and deployed an airstrike shield to block it before it could hit Raftalia. Move. Damn. The whip just trapped around the shield and kept flying in Raftalia's direction. It moved like a snake. It wrapped around Raftalia's sword, and almost trapped around her wrists. But she dropped her sword before it could and jumped back to get some distance. "Well, you've got determination. I'll give you that. But do you think you can fight me barehanded?" Barehanded. Raftalia was very strong, but was she strong enough to take down this nobleman without a weapon? I didn't think so. I was worried. The fat man snapped the whip and Raftalia's sword flew into his hand. He brandished it against us. Raftalia avoided his thrust with a deft backbeam, then pulled out the other sword at her waist. The magic sword. She held it at him. But there was no blade there, just an empty hilt. The magic sword had been a present from the old guy at the weapon shop. It was pure magic fashioned into the shape of a sword. "I'm not barehanded." The nobleman burst into laughter. "What are you going to do with a toy sword?" But he was forgetting something important. "I wasn't just going to sit back and watch them. Don't think it'll go so smoothly." I reached out and grabbed his whip. My hand felt strange. It was like the whip was burning me. Pain pulsed into my hand. I knew the thing was cursed. "You must be a very foolish shield hero to reach for my whip." "You think? It's not so bad." It was burning me, but I could handle the pain. "And since you're focusing on me, I can attack." Raftalia's magic sword suddenly had a blade, and she quickly directed an overhead swing at him. Whoops! The nobleman abandoned his whip and jumped back to avoid her thrust. "You're pretty quick." "Not as quick as I am, though." He was small and plump, but he really was pretty powerful. Judging from how he knocked out that guard with one hit, he should be fighting in the waves by himself. Melty looked a nice guy. "That man. He fought with my father a long time ago in a war against the demi-humans." I was starting to get it. So he used to be a military man. That would explain his strength and resolve. And if he had been in a war against the demi-humans, he probably knew more about battle than we did, considering that we had only ever really battled with monsters. But don't think that taking care of my whip means you're going to win this. That's my line. I might not be able to attack on my own, but Raftalia here is more than powerful enough. Hey, if you would make a demi-human your party member, then you're obviously not taking this seriously enough. Raftalia. Yes. She nodded deeply, then held her hands over the point of her sword. The blade started to glow brighter. "Philo." Raftalia called for Philo. "What?" "To take this guy down, I need both you and Melty to chant magic spells." "Okay, come on, Mel." "But, oh, all right." Confused about something, Melty looked from the nobleman to the rest of us. Then she nodded, apparently having made some decision, and began to focus on her magic. "What's this?" The shield demon really must have brainwashing powers, to think he would use the princess as a pawn. "I have not been brainwashed. I believe that your behavior is evil, and so I will punish you as the princess." "You fool. I am the source of all power. Hear my words and heed them." "Shoot him with a ball of water." Zweitak was shot. "I am the source of all power. Hear my words and heed them." "Cut him with the blade of sky." White wing cutter. Melty and Philo cast their spells at nearly the same moment. A ball of water shot from Melty's hands, and a blade of air shot from Philo's. Both flew at the nobleman. Ha! The nobleman dodged Philo's blade, then produced another whip from somewhere and knocked the ball of water off course. Now, while he was avoiding the spells, he left a weak spot unattended. Raftalia readied her sword and ran at him. "You think that will do me in?" He cracked the whip at her. I wouldn't let that happen. I stepped forward and swung the whip I'd taken from him, catching the tip of his new whip in mid-flight. What? Aligning her timing with my own, Raftalia let out a shout. Using her foot, she flipped a sword that the guard had dropped into the air and caught it. Then she readied her magic sword like a javelin and threw it at the nobleman. It plunged deep into his chest. The magic sword could nullify its opponent's magic. She'd used it to knock out bitch before, so it should have had some kind of effect. Ugh. Not yet. No, it's over. There was a dull sound, and suddenly Raftalia's sword was buried to the hilt in the nobleman's shoulder. No, damn you. You think it's all right for a demi-human to hurt me? I survived the demi-human war. You fought demi-humans in the war? Then save your complaints for the war. You're not in a war anymore. I'll never forgive you. I'll kill you. You're a coward. You only attack people weaker than yourself. What were the demi-humans you fought like? The ones I know were all women and children. Disadvantaged people. Don't talk to me about how you fought them. Still incensed, she pushed him to the window, broke it, and pushed him out. As he fell, she let her sword stay in him, but kept her grip on the magic sword and the blade pulled from his falling body. Ah! No! I immediately dropped both of the whips and watched the nobleman plunge through the window. That was close. If I'd waited, the whips would have pulled me through the window with him. There, the governor lost to the shield demon. The remaining guards all quickly ran away. I'll get that flag back. The flag from that day. Raftalia stood in the window, whispering to the sky. She then recovered herself and ran over to me. Are you all right? Huh? Yeah, no problem. We still had a little holy water left over from treating Raftalia's curse. The curse itself wasn't so bad. The holy water would be sufficient to heal it. I went to the window and looked down at the courtyard. The nobleman was lying there, face turned to the sky. I think he was dead. When I thought about the things that Raftalia had told me, how he'd tortured demi-humans, it seemed like a fitting end. Okay, if we hang around here we'll get caught up in the confusion. We'd better be on our way. But first... right. First we had to save any demi-humans he'd imprisoned. That was what Raftalia wanted, so I wanted it too. I turned a nice guy and made a request. This man used to buy demi-human slaves and keep them in his basement so that he could torture them. Unfortunately that is not such a rare thing in this country. It could be that, even if we saved them, we are on the run. I don't think we will be able to provide the things they need while we are running from the crown. I know it's a lot to ask, but I knew that I was asking too much. I was putting him in further danger. But if I was going to grant Raftalia's request, there was no other option. I understand your situation. I will do anything I can to help you. Nice guy smiled. He hadn't lied to us yet, so I didn't see any choice but to trust him. It will be okay. I have many demi-human allies, and I know that they will help me. That's good to hear. Raftalia led us to the basement room. The door was locked, but Philo used her powerful legs to kick the door down. The second we walked in, we were overcome by a powerful stench. It was the same smell that came from the slave trader's tent. It was that smell of death and decay that told you to keep your distance. This wasn't good. I have a bad feeling about this. Philo looked really worried. Melty was shaking, obviously scared. Then she settled herself and seemed ready to accept whatever we found. It's a little further. We walked down the stairs in the dark and came to the basement. It was filled with various torture instruments. I saw a skeleton in the corner. How many people had met their ends here? I turned to see Raftalia praying before a small skeleton in the corner. This girl she was a friend from my village. Her name was Rifana, and Raftalia was looking down at the skeleton. She seemed about to cry, and turned her face away. They must have been close. Rifana was a bright, happy girl. She liked to talk about legends. Listening to Raftalia, Melty looked ready to cry herself. She was the princess of this country. It must have been hard to see this kind of misery happen within her own borders. So much tragedy could be blamed on the waves, but this was different. This was nothing more than an evil man taking advantage of the chaos around him. Really, Everyone around here seemed rotten to the core. She was more girly than me. She was so nice. I'm sorry. To think of the end that Raftalia's friend had met. It made me sad. Had things been different, we might have met when she was alive. We might have been friends. She always said that she wanted to marry someone like the SHIELD hero. But her dream never came true. She died in this cold basement. Just thinking about it filled me with rage. She probably wanted to live. She probably died wishing for escape. He'd done this to her simply because she was a demi-human. I couldn't even imagine what went through his mind. I don't know what kind of person I was in comparison to the children that died here. But I could say one thing. We avenged them. What should we do with them? Should we take them? We could take their bones and give them a proper funeral somewhere. Yes, it's too cold and sad here. You're right. We silently picked up the bones and put them into a bag. Were there any slaves? Yes. Nice guy answered from the back of the room. After we'd gathered the bones, we made our way to the back of the room. The slave was covered with bruises and cuts. It looked like he'd been badly tortured. His eyes were devoid of life. He looked to be around 10 years old, and he had dog-like ears. Despite being a boy, he was kind of cute. You know how some guys are like girls when they are only 10 years old? Who are you? That voice. Who's that? Do you know him? Yes, Keel, that's you, isn't it? Who are you? How do you know my name? Did you forget me? I've grown a little since we last saw each other. It's me, Raftalia. What? Keel raised his head in surprise. It can't be. Raftalia is shorter than me. She's not some tall beautiful woman. I mean, she was cute and all. Keel was muttering to himself like a dead man. You'd pretend to be a friend? Why? How are you trying to trick me? His eyes filled with tears. He was overcome with despair. He was just like Raftalia when I'd met her. I'll prove it to you then. 2 months before the wave came, you went to the beach looking for a pretty shell. You wanted to surprise your dad for his birthday, but you nearly drowned, and Sadina had to jump in and save you. He seemed to smile, like the memory brought him joy. It did seem like the sort of thing that only the real Raftalia would know. Could it be Raftalia? He was looking her over very carefully. It's me. Do you remember eating that poisonous mushroom out in the field? You got sick and hid so that no one would know. I found you that day, and you told me to keep it a secret. You were shaking. Ah, yes, I believe you. It's you, Raftalia. Finally, the slave, Keel, recognized Raftalia. Raftalia, why are you so big? Why are you so pretty? Even if you knew that demi-humans grew as they leveled up, seeing it with your own eyes was another thing. Raftalia had been so small when I found her. I was shocked when she grew up before my eyes. Had I grown up with her myself, it would have been all the more surprising. I'm actually Mr. Nofumi, the SHIELD hero's slave right now. What? Keel, the demi-human slave, looked at me, but he was so weak that he couldn't lock his sight onto one thing. I must have looked blurry to him. I reached into my pocket for some ointment and made to treat his wounds. Don't touch me. It's okay, relax. This is medicine. Next he would need some nutritional medicine. I knew that I really shouldn't use it in situations like this, but I couldn't ignore a crisis right before my eyes. I had to help him. Not that I was actually a holy saint with a beautiful heart or anything, but this was Raftalia's friend, Ark. He resisted at first, but he realized I wasn't trying to hurt him, and he slowly drank the medicine. My shield had many strange powers. One of them increased the efficacy of medicines. In times like this, I was grateful for how useful it was. He looked a little better already. A little color returned to his cheeks. I wasn't very good with recovery magic. I had been able to treat his wounds, but he hadn't recovered any energy. Realizing that he was safe, he suddenly fell forward, exhausted, and began to snore. I cannot believe that my country allowed this to happen. Melty whispered to herself. I'd watched my mother work in other countries, so I thought that I understood demi-humans and humans. But this, I cannot forgive this. You have to be a little more hysterical. Why not scream? I can never forgive this. That would be more like you. That's not who I really am. Just what kind of person do you take me for? Melty suddenly realized what she was doing and clamped her hands over her mouth. Sometimes you get hysterically angry, and your face gets all red. That's you, Melty. What was that? Okay, we can't stay here forever. Let's get going. Nice Guy picked Keel up and held him over his shoulder. We turned and left the basement. We talked as we climbed the stairs. First, we need to focus on getting out of town. It's not like we can all fit on Philo's back. It was hard enough to fit 3 of us on there, much less 5. Why don't we have Philo take the nobleman, Keel, and Melty out of here first? Good idea. They could jump over the wall and get out easily. The town entrance still seemed to be embroiled in an uproar. What was going on? I was wondering that when I noticed blood pooling on the stairs. I followed it up and saw that it was coming from the courtyard, and the blood continued out to... What? What is it? I was silently pointing to the courtyard. Raftalia understood and nodded. Ha, ha, ha. Now I finally have a way to kill you. The nobleman who'd fallen from the 2nd floor, the nobleman we thought was dead, was standing there, laughing. Damn it. What's next? The nobleman's shoulder was bleeding profusely. He was facing the gravestone-like boulder, chanting some kind of spell. This wasn't good. Keel was still that man's slave, which meant he could use the slave seal to kill him. What should we do? We just managed to save Raftalia's friend. If he died now, then it was all for nothing, but the slave curse didn't need a spell to work. He could just order him to die, or choose to do so from his status magic. So was he doing something else? We have to stop him. Nice Guy turned to me and shouted, What is it? Shield hero, do you know the legend of this town? I heard they chased something away and then sealed it up. It's still here. I was getting a bad feeling about this. It couldn't be. It's true. The sealing stone has been watched over by this town's nobility for generations, and now I could tell where the story was going. The fat man was attempting to break the seal. Back up. Okay. Nice Guy took Keel and ran while the rest of us approached the fat man as he chanted at the sealing stone. You've finally come, shield demon. He was screaming like an insane person now. I don't know what's sealed inside that thing, but you better stop that right now. Raftalia and Philo readied themselves for battle. Now that we were outside, it would be easier to fight than it had been in that small room. You're too late. If only you hadn't shown up. This town would still be peaceful. Peaceful, huh? If you hadn't stolen Melty and dragged her here, none of this would be happening. It's all your fault, shield demon. I don't have time to listen to the complaints of a coward who gets his kicks from torturing children. I didn't know what was sealed away in there, but I had to find some way to stop him. The longer we waited, the worse things were going to get. The other heroes would probably look on with relish. They would want to fight a monster to get its rare items and experience. But I say it's better to let sleeping dogs lie. I am not a coward. I am purging the world of its lower life forms. I am a righteous man. Damn it. There was no reasoning with him. I knew how it felt to find joy in the misery of people you hated, so I'd thought that maybe we could come to an understanding. But I was wrong. I never truly wished for the death of anyone, ever. Even if it was about a specific person, maybe that was understandable. But to hate an entire class of people made no sense at all. Anyway, who knew what this guy was up to? Looking at the sealing stone made me very nervous. We had to stop him. I stepped forward and began to prepare a skill that would restrain the nobleman. But before I could use it, the stone cracked and fell to pieces. It is finished. If I can kill the shield demon, my place in God's heaven will be secure. Ha, ha. The nobleman let out a laugh like a broken toy. The ground began to shake. Cracks appeared in the earth. What's happening? Yes, destroy it all. The sealed monster will destroy the shield demon. The sky over the mansion was filled with purple light. I looked up to see cracks appearing in the sky, like a tortoise shell. It was at that very moment that the sealed monster appeared. Master. All of Philo's feathers stood on end. She was staring at the sky. What is it? Large reptilian feet, tipped with large, sharp claws, slowly stepped through the crack. They were followed by a large, muscular body, then an enormous eyeball, and finally a massive jaw appeared, rimmed with teeth so large and sharp they could shred metal. I saw what the monster was. It was a 20-meter-tall, carnivorous dinosaur. Chapter 3, Tyrant Dragon Rexo. Oh. A huge dinosaur appeared in the sky. I didn't call it a dragon on purpose. It looked exactly like a dinosaur, to be more specific. It looked like an overgrown Tyrannosaurus Rex, but meaner and scarier. It wasn't like a normal monster in the field. It was a dinosaur. A rift opened in the sky above us, and the massive beast came crashing down into the mansion. Ha! 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 For the glory of God! The mansion collapsed under the weight of the dinosaur. Then, with insanity still in his eyes, the nobleman was instantly crushed under the foot of the advancing beast. He was crazy all the way until the end, and he did crazy things until the end. How were we supposed to defeat such a huge monster? We're all escaping together. Philo, you understand? Yeah. Philo ran back to the courtyard entrance, and picked up Nice Guy and Keel before running away. Raftalia, Melty, and I all took off running in unison. We made for the property exit. The dinosaur roared and started to destroy what remained of the mansion. I come to a new world and have to deal with dinosaurs? I didn't think there were monsters like that here, but, thinking a little more, there were dragons here, so I guess dinosaurs weren't such a stretch. Dragons and dinosaurs were in pretty similar categories. After all, why would he summon something like that just to kill Nofumi? The fool. He didn't think through this at all. He would see his whole town destroyed just to kill one person, so he would rather see me die than survive himself? What was wrong with him? Just how much did he hate me? Hurry. If you don't hurry, he'll chase after us. Raftalia was right, Philo. What? Can you make yourself big enough for all of us to ride you? Nofumi, don't ask for impossible things. I'm not. I think Philo can do it. Really? Can you do that, Philo? Yeah, Philo might be able to do it. Philo, with Nice Guy and Keel on her back, ran up to us. I don't think I can. I can't get much bigger than this. Damn. I guess I should have expected that. What if you were bigger? I wonder. Wasn't she still growing? See? It's not impossible. Don't you think she could? Melty turned to see the beast, then turned back to me. She nodded. I'd heard that dinosaurs like moving targets. We ran, but that only attracted it. Now it was chasing after us. We didn't have time to sit and chat. We were about to end up as dinosaur food. With such a large monster chasing us, it felt like we were in the middle of an earthquake. The ground shook with every step. I was starting to understand why people always fell over in movie chase scenes like this. Running was hard enough. I felt like I'd lose my footing. And if we fell, that would be the end. The debris from the destroyed mansion was cluttering the path, which slowed the dinosaurs' progress. But once we cleared the debris entirely, Philo was the only one who stood a chance of outrunning the beast. What should we do? Fight? Here, in the middle of town? Think of all the damage we'd cause. That's true, but I wasn't sure that we could win, but I did know that we didn't stand a chance running. All right then, we run, and lure the beast after us. Once we get to somewhere we can fight without endangering others, we do it. We left the mansion grounds to find the streets filled with panicking pedestrians. I could see the headlines now. Shield Demon destroys town, causes uproar. Damn, this was all the proof I needed to see that Ren and Itsuki weren't nearby. The dinosaur was sniffing around to see where its prey had vanished to. This didn't feel right. There, I caught sight of its name, Tyrant Dragon Rex. Something on the dinosaur's chest began to glow. At the same time, Philo's stomach started glowing too. Philo? What? The dinosaur is looking straight at us, and I think it might have something to do with your glowing stomach. Well, you know what? I think that big gecko wants to eat me. Okay, Philo, you run. Lure the monster out of town. What? Nofumi? Are you going to abandon Philo? No, I want her to lure the monster somewhere away from people and then come back. But he's after Philo, so I don't think he'll just let her go. You're right. I'd thought that Philo was fast enough to make it, but I shouldn't use her as bait. No, I want to stay with you, Master. Mr. Nofumi, you shouldn't ask that of her. I know, but it must be hard to be the shield hero. Nice Guy chimed in like nothing was going on. Still, the monster is drawn to Philo. We need to lure him out of town, then fight and defeat him. If we fought in the center of town, the damage would be tremendous. The nearest exit was, actually it wasn't very far at all, and Philo could jump over walls. Okay, so we are going to lure the monster out of town to keep the civilians safe. What are you going to do? We should probably split up. I was asking Nice Guy and Melty. Keel was unconscious, so there was no asking what he wanted. I don't think we could take him with us though. I'm going to run away with this kid, but first I'd like to help evacuate the town. Can you do that? The Demir humans from my town are here, so I think we can do it together. Nice Guy climbed down from Philo. I feel like we are abandoning you here. I wish we didn't have to. It's not like that. All this happened because I reached out to you, shield hero. Don't worry about it. Okay then, I won't. Melty, what will you do? I'm going with you, obviously. Back at Nice Guy's place, she'd thought that she could sneak off back to her further and fix things, but after having her life put in danger by that crazy nobleman, it really only made sense for her to stay with us. Entrusting herself to an authoritative nobleman put her in just as much danger as she was in with us, so nothing changed. Looks like we're all set. Ugh. Keel moaned, and his eyes blinked open. Maybe he still wasn't totally unconscious. His eyes seemed to have trouble focusing. He held his hand out to Raftalia. Keel, really terrible things are happening right now, but we're going to take care of it, so you have to go on living. Raftalia, no, don't go. Keel, it will be okay. I have to go do what I can. I'll get our flag back. Keel, wait for me. She slipped off the bangle that I'd made for her and put it on Keel's arm. Let's go, Mr. Nofumi. We have to stop this before anyone else gets hurt. Yeah, but are you sure you want to give him that bangle? I should have asked you first. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's yours. Do whatever you want with it. She must have meant to signify that she was making him a promise. If so, I wasn't going to step in and ruin it. Keel, goodbye. But, Raftalia. The tyrant dragon Rex's roar was so powerful it made my head ring. Let's go. Okay, Roger. We all immediately set about our duties. As if to break the silence, the dinosaur came crashing after us. I couldn't see where Nice Guy had gone. We climbed onto Philo's back and took off running. We slipped through town and jumped over the wall to escape. The tyrant dragon Rex was right behind us. It crashed through the town wall. We ran through a field bathed in moonlight. The town behind us was smoking. This wasn't my fault. I wasn't to blame for it. Good thing he keeps chasing Philo. Yeah. Nofumi, if we don't hurry, he'll catch us. I know, Philo. Can't you go any faster? We had to get as far from town as we could, even if we fought well enough to defeat it. If it ran off through another town, then the casualties would only get worse. So we ran, the dinosaur on our tail. Think we've gone far enough? The town looked far in the distance now. Had we put enough distance between us? We better start fighting soon. Are you all ready? Yes, I'm ready. If I stick with you geese, my life will be a short one. Philo, are you ready? Yeah, I'll do my best. Right. When I shouted, Philo stopped running and spun to face the monster. The tyrant dragon Rex was crashing after us, shaking the earth with each step. White breath puffed from its mouth, and its teeth dripped with saliva. If it sunk its teeth into me, there was no way I'd survive. Not that I was going to let that happen. We jumped off of Philo's back and readied ourselves for a fight. The beast didn't slow down at all. It kept running at us but lowered its head to attack. I don't think so. Airstrike shield. The tyrant dragon Rex was running straight for me when the shield materialized in front of it. Something about this reminded me of the way we'd fought the zombie dragon. We'd done all right for ourselves back then, so things should be fine this time too. Right? With an echoing crack, the beast bit right through my airstrike shield. It crumbled and fell, but it left itself open for attack. Higher. Philo lead the charge. She reared back and swung a powerful kick into the dinosaur's jaw, but she was wearing iron claws now, so her attack was higher than it had been back when we fought the dragon zombie. Still, the kick didn't seem to affect the dinosaur the way it had hurt the dragon zombie. He didn't seem to hesitate. Ugh, it's so hard. Be careful. When Philo fought the dragon, she'd left herself open for a second, and the dragon had swallowed her. Luckily the dragon didn't have teeth, and its organs had been rotting. What would happen this time? Yeah. After delivering her kick to the beast's jaw, she immediately jumped back, gaining distance before rushing forward in a flash and kicking at the monster's stomach. She was acting like a skilled fighter now. White Aqua Slash. Melty sent a magic spell flying at the tyrant dragon Rex. It was a sharp blade of water. Take that. Raftalia was with them now, and she thrust the magic sword into the beast. All of their attacks produced satisfying sounds of connection, but the monster was too big. None of them were able to take the beast down. Master platform. Got it. Airstrike shield. Second shield. 2 different magic shields appeared before the dinosaur. My airstrike shields would remain deployed for 15 seconds. Honestly, it wasn't very long, but Philo was fast. Higher. Pop. She was flipping and jumping from shield to shield, delivering powerful kicks each time. Finally unnerved, the tyrant dragon Rex let out an enraged howl and began to violently thrash its head and tail. Philo jumped out of the way before its attacks connected. Raftalia was the one in danger. I ran forward and blocked the thrashing tail before it could hit her. Ugh. Mr. No Fumi. It was very heavy. I was able to hold it back for now, but if the tail was this strong then I'd never survive a bite from the jaw. This wasn't good. The monster was very large but slow enough that we'd been able to hold our own. Still, none of our attacks were strong enough to bring the dinosaur down. Philo was getting a lot of good hits in, but if she wasn't strong enough to bring the monster down, then Raftalia wasn't going to be able to do so either. Melty's magic wasn't very powerful either. At the moment she was throwing out spells as a way to assist Philo, but they weren't strong enough to deal much damage on their own. Had this been a game of some kind, it would be the kind of battle in which you just needed to run the clock down. Too bad this wasn't a game. If we figured out its weakness, it would run. Sure, that would be good for us, but then we'd have to worry about where it was running to. A town full of people, no doubt. Furthermore, I realized this when I blocked its thrashing tail. The thing had a lot of attack power. I was probably the only one with a defense rating high enough to survive an attack. I might have to rely on the Shield of Rage. It was strong enough to block the beast's attacks, plus it had counterattacks of its own. The Shield of Rage was the strongest shield I had, but it was very dangerous. It was formed from the hatred I had for this world. The first time I used it was in the battle with the dragon zombie, after it had eaten Philo. When I use it, the rage takes over my body, and I get violent. Because of that, I'd accidentally cursed Raftalia, who had been trying to help me. It was the sort of shield that gave me a lot of strength but asked for something in return. It wasn't the sort of thing I could just whip out on a whim, but it was also true that there were times when, had I not used it, we would have all ended up dead. It's okay. Then I'm going. Be careful. Okay. Raftalia brandished her sword and ran for the tyrant dragon Rex, but her attack didn't seem to be very effective. Philo was fighting well and holding her own, but she wouldn't be able to keep that up for very long. Her stamina had limits. After all, I didn't know how much stamina the tyrant dragon Rex had, but it seemed reasonable to assume it was more than we did. If we kept fighting as we were, this wasn't going to end well. But what other choice did we have? After I got the dragon zombie core, my Shield of Rage grew stronger, because of which, and because Philo had also eaten from the dragon zombie core, whenever I used the Shield of Rage, Philo went crazy. Was it worth the risk? No Fumi. What? Melty was yelling for me from the back line. Was she able to see something from her vantage point at the back? Something strange is happening. Huh? I looked around to see what she was talking about. Off in the distance I heard some kind of animal call. What was it? The area started to fill with small floating lights, like fireflies. Huh? Philo held her wings against her head, like she was trying to concentrate. What is it? I can hear someone talking. They're saying that they will be here soon, so we should wait. Who said that? I dunno. What was happening? We were right in the middle of a battle here. The tyrant dragon Rex seemed to sense that something was happening also. It raised its head and was looking around. No Fumi. What? There's some kind of force field. Force field? Yes, can't you see it? It's like a mist hanging over us. I tried to look far into the distance, but the air grew thick, and I couldn't see very far. That looks like a very powerful force field. What is it? I've heard of a mysterious forest. There are legends about it. I heard that the old weapons of the heroes from long ago are sleeping there, and that it's protected by a force field to keep people away. Sounds like you know all about it. My mother likes legends, and she took me to see the mysterious forest. The force field looked just like this. What was that supposed to mean? Did it mean that we weren't going to be able to escape even if we tried? When you tried to cross over it, it brings you back to where you started. I think someone has cast a force field over us. Someone was trapping us? That didn't sound good at all. I imagined that bitch or trash had hired an assassin to do this to us. I imagined them reclining back and watching us to make sure we died at the hands of the tyrant dragon Rex. What it meant was this. There was no way out. I looked around. The grass and trees were filled with strange lights. What the hell was going on? Suddenly an enormous herd of philolials appeared and came running straight for us. The whole field was covered in philolials. This was turning into a traumatic experience. Wow, philolials. Melty's eyes were shining. She looked so happy. Why did she like philolials so much? Whatever. This was not the time to entertain her hobbies. The dinosaur howled in anger at the new developments. Then he lowered his head to attack. Damn it. We had no choice. I prepared to switch to the shield of rage. Don't. My shield arm flew back, struck with a sharp pain. I looked down to find the shield itself glowing. I was still able to change shields if I wanted though. I tried, again, to switch to the shield of rage, but, due to interference, you may not change weapons. A flashing icon appeared in my field of vision, and I was no longer able to switch shields. There was also a small clock displaying the remaining time before I could make a switch. I could probably switch shields again when the timer ran out. Who's there? A voice I'd never heard before had interjected and kept me from changing shields. Why would they stop me? What were they after? You will be all right. Just wait. You do no need to turn to that power. Damn. Higher. Philo flipped through the air and delivered a solid kick to the dinosaur's jaw before landing deftly in the grass and dashing back, picking me and Raftalia up, and taking us back to Melty. What's happening? They said to stand back. I didn't hear that, or did she mean that strange voice? We were completely surrounded by philolials. There were too many to count. Their eyes were shining in the dark. The sheer number of them was unbelievable. What was happening? My only idea was that they were somehow trying to trap the monster there. Could it be that they formed giant herds to hunt giant monsters? Or maybe they were trying to get Philo to join their group? The herd of philolials split around the monster. It was just like the parting of the Red Sea. Gah. One of the philolials stepped out of the group and started to walk in our direction. It looked a lot like Philo when she was in her normal philolial form. But this one was light blue. It stood about 2 meters tall, and looked a lot like a large ostrich, but it looked fluffier than other philolials, like its feathers were softer. It also had a single feather that stuck vertically up from the crown of its head. Most philolials were pink, but this one was a light blue color. There were still white patches, but most of it was blue. It was pulling a gorgeous carriage, and a large gemstone was set in the center of it. The jewel reminded me of a gemstone I'd seen before, but I couldn't remember where. https://mp40. I looked at my shield. Then I realized it was the same shape as the jewel in the center of my shield. Hey, it's that philolial from before. You know this thing? Yes, I met her before I ran into you guys. Really? She had a sense of authority about her. She was clearly the leader of the herd, and she didn't seem as dull-witted as a typical Philolial. The tyrant dragon Rex appeared to recognize these qualities in her as well. The beast seemed to be on guard. It seemed ready to attack at any moment, but was holding back to see what the blue Philolial would do. Wow, what a cool carriage. I'm jealous. Philo's eyes sparkled when she caught sight of the carriage. I didn't like it. The last thing I wanted was to parade around like new money. Besides, I could imagine what the public would say if they saw me in that thing. Gah. The blue Philolial removed the reins herself and stepped forward. Another Philolial swooped in behind her and removed the carriage. What's happening? Gwee-ee-ee-ee-ee-ee. The blue Philolial let out a sustained call. All the leaves on the trees and bushes began to shine a bright green, and a powerful wind blew through the area. What was going on? The blue Philolial began to grow. She expanded into a large, black silhouette. She was huge. The silhouette was big and puffy. She was transforming, but she was able to grow much larger than Philo could. When she'd first stepped forward, she stood about 2 meters tall, but she'd grown to at least 6 now. She kept growing until she was the same size as the tyrant dragon Rex. Then she stopped growing. Wow, she's so big. Melty was unable to hide her joy. She whispered to herself like a giddy child. Compared to the pink and white Philolials below, this Philolial queen was clearly light blue. The major difference was the vertical feather that stood from the crown of her head. I've kept you waiting, shield hero, and you too, little girl who likes Philolials. The huge Philolial queen finished greeting us and then directed her gaze to the tyrant dragon Rex. Her voice sounded a lot like Philo's but was perhaps a bit deeper. She spoke. Philo talks too. I know that. Woo, she's so big. I stood there, mouth agape, as the huge Philolial queen took a step towards the tyrant dragon Rex. Looks like the Dragon King fragment has puffed you up a little. I think the Dragon King fragment doesn't suit you. That's why you're so big. You might be big, but you're just an everyday monster. The enormous Philolial queen spoke to the dinosaur. If you give me the fragment now, I will let you live. Hand it over and go. The tyrant dragon Rex lowered his head and roared in response, attempting to scoop her into his jaws right then and there. He ran forward, no avoiding it then. The enormous Philolial queen raised her foot and kicked the dinosaur, but she seemed to have been holding back, as she didn't put much of her weight into it. Regardless, when the kick connected, the tyrant dragon Rex went flying like a kickball. The tyrant dragon Rex came crashing down in the dirt and then rose shakily to its feet. Then it quickly turned and attempted to swing its powerful tail at the Philolial. Weak. The Philolial raised a wing to block the tail easily. The tyrant dragon Rex roared in anger, bared its fangs and rushed at the Philolial queen. Higher. The Philolial queen reared back and kicked the dinosaur's jaw hard, flipping backwards like rag doll. The dinosaur crashed to the ground. In a flash, the Philolial was beside it, kicking at its torso. The dinosaur flew into the air. The huge beast was suspended in the air. Higher, higher, higher. Without touching down, the Philolial delivered a series of kicks that kept them suspended. She was blindingly fast. What the hell? I considered myself an experienced gamer, but I'd never seen a combo like that. It was like a fighting game. It was like an aerial combo. A counter indicating the number of successive hits appeared before my eyes. At the end it read 35 hits. The difference in strength was apparent, overwhelming. With a final slam, the dinosaur came crashing down. The combo was over. The beast rose on unsteady legs. Immediately afterwards, a large magical seal appeared in the air. Is it going to cast a spell? The Philolial queen readied herself. Then the beast leaned forward. I thought it was going to cast a spell, but instead it opened its mouth, and a massive pillar of flame came roaring out of it. Whoa! I could feel the heat on my skin from across the field. Had I been hit with an attack like that, I don't think even the Shield of Rage could have withstood it. The tyrant dragon Rex was running at the Philolial and breathing fire. No matter how large she might have been, if the pillar of flame hit her she'd be roasted alive. Lukewarm. The Philolial raised a wing, or I thought she did, and stopped the pillar of flame without blinking. What was this? Some kind of monster battle? We were standing in the field and watching but didn't have anything to contribute. Let's end this. The Philolial raised her wings and crossed them before her. I've seen something like that before. The second I thought that, the massive Philolial queen appeared to blur before immediately reappearing behind the dinosaur. Yup, that was Philo's trump card, a magic attack called Haikuiku Jia. Her claws tore through the monster time and time again until, finally, the dinosaur fell to pieces and died. Chapter 4. The legendary bird god the felled tyrant dragon Rex lay in bloody strips, and there was something shining among them. It appeared to be some kind of glowing ore. The Philolial queen picked it up and then turned to us. Sorry I kept you waiting. We were all speechless. Not even Philo had been able to deal damage to the massive monster, and this huge Philolial queen had defeated it so easily. You're so big. Melty's eyes were shining as she looked up at the huge bird. She sure did switch moods quickly. Whenever she spoke to me she bordered on hysterics, but she was polite when she spoke to others, and obsessively fawning when she spoke to Philo or other Philolials. You must be the shield hero. Oh, yeah. When something the size of a building speaks to you, you answer the best you can. Had we been enemies, well, I don't think I could beat her in a fight. I couldn't see how that would be possible, and if Melty had been right, if we really were enclosed in a force field then we wouldn't be able to run either. I even thought about trying to escape on Philo, but if this was a Philolial queen, she'd be at least as fast as Philo. There was no escape. Do you need something from me? I have many things I wish to discuss with you, but it's not polite to speak to you like this. Wait a moment please. The huge Philolial queen closed her eyes and seemed to be concentrating. As she did she began to shrink. Finally her large wings closed around her body completely. When she opened them again, there was a young girl standing there, about the same height as Philo, with wings on her back. Her hair was silver with thin streaks of light blue, and it was cut in a short bob, but there were 3 tufts of hair standing up vertically from the crown of her head, like cowlicks. Her eyes were red, and her gaze carried an air of authority about it. Her face was small and well composed, quite beautiful, really. She was dressed in a red and white Gothic-style dress. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Victoria, the Queen of the Philolials. She flicked her head and smirked, a rather childlike movement that stood in opposition to the air of power and authority that hung about her. It's hard to describe, but because she was in human form, I sort of got the impression that she was a small child trying to act like an adult. Victoria? But that's the name of the Philolial in the legends. Melty was shocked. Really? Yes. There is a legend saying that Victoria was raised by 4 legendary heroes in the past, when they were summoned during a wave of destruction. The past. Well, I don't know how long ago you are referencing, but she might be the successor. I think I remembered that. Back when Motoyasu and I were being summoned, they had said something about waves in the ancient past. If we were talking about something that far back, then she couldn't be the Philolial of the legends, could she? It must have been a name that the current leader of the Philolials inherited or something. If not, just how old was this girl? My name has always been Victoria, and there has only ever been one. Victoria turned her head to the side in confusion while she spoke. She was very serious and powerful, but occasionally she displayed those very Philolial-like moments of animal stupidity. Are you saying that you've been alive since ancient times? Yup. She said it very matter-of-factly. I looked at Philo, then back at Victoria. I guess I could believe it. Just think how fast Philo had grown. If Philo had gotten that big, I don't think we'd have been able to feed her though. We had enough trouble feeding her as it was. I didn't want her getting any bigger. If she got too big to feed then we'd probably have to part ways. But then I remembered how much money I'd invested in Philo. I couldn't let that go to waste. Master, you're thinking of weird stuff. You're right. That face he's making, it means he's thinking of something unrelated. You can read him so well. I have no idea. You'll figure it out. Annoying brats. I wish they would stop trying to figure out what I was thinking. You were thinking that if Philo got that big, you'd have to abandon her. Boo. Abandon her? How could you think such things? To think. Only minutes ago you'd asked her to try and get bigger. Oh, relax. How would we feed something that big? Mr. Nofumi, I don't think she would get so large overnight. Sure, but think about how fast she grew to this size. If she had another growth spurt, she might end up like that. Ms. Raftalia, why aren't you saying anything? Melty grabbed onto Raftalia's hands and shouted. The scary part was that it could really happen. Maybe. It would take a long time to grow to that size, so don't worry about it. Victoria seemed hesitant to intrude, but she raised her hand and answered my concerns. Normal philolials have fixed lifespans of a few decades. Well, that was a relief. I didn't want her to have a growth spurt and turn into a mountain or something, but then I realized that Victoria's phrasing implied that she had been alive for much longer. Now then, Shield Hero and friends, may I ask you to introduce yourselves? Well, she was right. If she had given us her name, then I guess it was our turn. I'm Nofumi Iwatani. Iwatani is my last name, and Nofumi is my first name. It sounds like you already know I'm the Shield Hero. Yup. Victoria looked Raftalia next. My name is Raftalia. Pleased to meet you. Pleasure. I'm Philo. Philo didn't wait to be addressed before jumping in. Victoria stared at Philo for a moment, then directed her gaze to Melty. We've met before, haven't we? You love philolials. You protected me then. Thank you for that. Yes, my name is Melty Melremark. Okay, I'll call you Meltan. Melton. She didn't have good taste in nicknames. Back in my own world, I had a friend that used to add tan to everything. That just reminded me of it. Being an otaku myself, I was probably in the same category as people that did that though. Melton, pleased to formally meet you. See, even Melty made a weird face when she heard it. Boo. Philo shifted her weight and stepped forward. It almost looked like she was trying to protect Melty from Victoria. Was she jealous? She looked like a jealous friend who was mad that their friend was talking to someone else. I pictured Victoria saying something like, Philo, behavior like that will not win you any friends. Was I overthinking it? It reminded me of a traumatic scene from a famous game I'd once played. If we all fell silent here, the conversation would take a weird turn. I decided to hurry things along. So, of course I'll thank you for defeating that huge monster, the Tyrant Dragon Rex, for us. But, what can we do for you now? I'll explain the details of it all, but this is not a good place to talk. I'll show you where to go, so please follow me. Victoria pointed to her carriage. Did she want us to ride in it while she took us somewhere? First, we should. Should what? Victoria turned her head to the side again. I looked over at the Tyrant Dragon Rex's corpse. In response, Victoria furrowed her brow. I would rather the heroes did not use things from dragons to improve their weapons. Oh, that's right. Philolials and dragons didn't get along. Apparently the queen of the Philolials had the same way of thinking about them, but that had nothing to do with me. I had to do whatever I could to get stronger, especially considering how powerful the Tyrant Dragon Rex had been. I couldn't afford to ignore materials like that. Too bad. Very well then, I'll have my tribe bring it after us then. Please get into the carriage. Will you bring the organs too? Philolials sometimes can't control their appetites, and I need more than the bones. As you like. Thank you. Nofumi, you're so petty. Whatever. I went over to the shredded Tyrant Dragon Rex and let my shield absorb various parts of its body. I let it absorb the flesh, bones, scales, horns, fangs, and organs. It unlocked a new shield, or so I thought. Apparently I couldn't completely unlock the shield without reaching a higher level. Compared to our own strength, the Tyrant Dragon Rex had been much more powerful, so I suppose it only made sense. My level still wasn't high enough to unlock the shield I'd gotten after defeating the zombie dragon anyway. Are you ready? Victoria asked calmly. Sure. Okay, and your name was Philo, right? Can you turn into a human and ride with them? I could. But I'd rather pull the carriage. That is my carriage, so you can't pull it. I didn't know if she really couldn't let someone else pull it, or if she was childishly rebuffing Philo. Maybe she really was just like Philo but was pretending to be really important. Philo. Don't be selfish. Respect what Victoria says. Okay. Philo calmed down and turned into her human form. What was with them? Whatever. We all climbed into Victoria's strangely gorgeous carriage. The interior was more spacious than I'd expected, but I guess we were going to start traveling by carriage. We were surrounded by a vast herd of philolials. If we weren't careful, we'd be spotted soon enough. I guess Victoria had cast a force field over us though, so that should keep people away. If Motoyasu realized that I was in the carriage, he'd come chasing after it. No doubt about that. Portal. Victoria stepped in front of the carriage and took the reins before shouting something. When she yelled, the scenery around us instantly changed. What? Huh? What's happening? Wow. What the hell? This girl clearly had some impressive powers. Did we move? Games often provide the player with a magical form of transport that will allow them to teleport to places they have already been. Most famous games seem to have them. I guess they were part of this world too. And yet, if I hadn't heard of it yet, then it must be pretty rare. The legendary Philolial. Yeah, maybe she did have reason to claim that title. We should be able to talk safely here. We climbed down from the carriage and took in our surroundings. It was dark, which made it hard to pick out much. But we seemed to be in the forest. Was it some kind of village in the forest? No, ruins. It appeared to be a destroyed castle. There were stones laid out in lines and buried in the dirt, and here and there stone houses poked out of the gloom. Plants had grown over everything, and the size and extent of the root systems meant that these things must have been here for a while. Further out, and the forest had taken over. There was a thick white fog over everything, which limited how far we could see. Vines and shrubbery covered everything. As far as I could see, I couldn't discern a way out. Where are we? This is the country that the original heroes fought to protect, or the ruins of it anyway. That's what they say. That's a vague answer. Well, it's been here since before I was born. I try to watch over it. Do you live here, Victoria? Melty's eyes were sparkling again. About half the time. My real home is. Well, I don't take people there. Huh. Probably the forest. Yup. It's so old. You can really feel the history. Tell me how you really feel. Saying it's old, or that you feel the history here. Philo and Raftalia were apparently really sharing the experience. As for me, the fog was so thick that I really didn't know. She didn't really lead us here. After all, she'd just transported us. How convenient. How were we supposed to get back? Hey, since you just transported us here, I was wondering if you could teleport us to a specific place when it's time to leave. With any luck we could get Motoyasu off our tail for good, or even better, we could find asylum in the Demir human kingdom without needing to rely on Melty's mother. You just got here, and you're asking about how to leave? It doesn't seem like the kind of place we should hang around. What? Melty shouted in disappointment. What was that all about? Did she want to hang out with the Philolials that badly? I wanted to keep this as short as we could. We were just visiting, that's all. For the time being, you should try and get some rest. Victoria raised her hand, and a Philolial appeared from the fog tugging a carriage loaded down with firewood. She set it on fire, making a large bonfire. That was a good idea, and we probably didn't need to worry about attracting enemies. The woods didn't seem to be populated by anything more vicious than a Philolial. Since the Philolials had invited us here and asked us to rest, there was probably nothing worth worrying about. Night was falling too. We should probably talk while we rested. Okay, it's definitely better to rest here than where we were before. Come on everyone, let's rest up. Okay. That was a long, tough day. Yes, it was. I sure hope that Keel and the others are all right. Worrying about it won't help them. If we try to go back to the town they'll catch us for sure. Yes. We all sat down before the campfire and relaxed. We had piles of Tyrant Dragon Rex meat, and I started to prepare it for dinner. Luckily enough, the well still seemed to be full of water. I checked to make sure it was safe, then decided to prepare a stew. Let's get some food in our bellies, I said to Raftalia and the others as I cooked. Philo stuck her index finger into her mouth and stared greedily at the bubbling pot. There were less of them due to the teleportation. but the surrounding philolials were looking on hungrily as well. Damn it. It was hard to eat when everyone was staring at you. No Fumi? Mr. No Fumi, it's hard to eat with everyone looking at us. Yeah, me too. Huh? You think so? Raftalia and Melty felt the same way I did. They cradled their bowls and looked around nervously. Philo was just greedily slurping down her food without a thought. You want some food too? May I? Well, we don't have enough food to feed you at the size you were earlier. That's all right. All I'd done is offer Victoria some food, but the surrounding philolials started gawking in response. Be quiet. All of them fell silent at Victoria's reproof, but they kept staring on with oppressive determination. This is delicious. It is. Ugh. Now Philo was staring at me with that look in her eyes. She and Victoria were like two peas in a pod. They were different colors though, so I suppose that was proof they weren't related. With Melty next to them, they could have all been sisters. They were pretty enough. I could have painted a picture of them. Very good. Raftalia had better manners than any of them. She was more dignified. Melty was dignified too, but she shared something with the ravenous philolials that made me want to lump them all together. What? Melty made a face and glared at me. Nothing. Were you thinking rude thoughts again? No comment. That means yes, doesn't it? I was thinking that those two make you look a little unrefined. You should pick your friends better. What was that? There she went again. She could be so noisy. Now, I was. Raftalia paused in the middle of her sentence to look around at all the philolials. They stared back. I couldn't ignore them either. I felt like the food was going to get caught in my throat. It was starting to get annoying. This is getting so annoying. Can't we just make a really big pot of it? I'll make whatever they want. Just bring me some tools. In the end, I couldn't endure their incessant stares, so I made a giant pot of soup and let them go at it. All in all, it took a few hours before they'd all finished eating. Raftalia, Philo, and Melty had all fallen asleep. I was exhausted from all the cooking. Phew. I was cleaning up the dishes and complaining to myself about why I had to spend my time feeding a bunch of birds when Victoria came over to me. What do you want? There isn't any left. I know that. Oh, okay then. What do you want? Can't it wait until morning? I wanted to get some rest. Huh? Melty and Philo were leaning against some fluffy philolials and sleeping soundly. How convenient. It must be nice to get some sleep while someone else does all the work. She was clearly accustomed to living the royal life. I was thinking the same thing, but the timing is right, so I'd like to talk a little. What is it? I'd like to know how the sealed monster came to be released. Huh? So you came without knowing that? No, I came because I'd been given a report that a new queen candidate had appeared. A queen candidate? You mean Philo? Victoria nodded. Can I ask you one thing? What? It was a suspicion that had been growing on me ever since Philo had hatched. Why does Philo grow so differently than other philolials? Victoria had said that she was a queen candidate. That's why I thought that she might have known the answer, because she's being raised by a hero. I suspected as much. Philo clearly looked different from other philolials, and she could even transform into a person. It was because I was raising her. I've answered your question. Now answer mine. I don't know how much I can tell you. How much do you know about me? I know that you are a hero that was summoned here because of the waves. I know that you are considered the religious enemy of Melrimark, a human supremacist nation. Oh. Had she learned all that through word of mouth from the other philolials? I didn't know just how well philolials were capable of communicating with one another, but I couldn't have guessed that they were so good at gathering and transmitting information. I'm not all-powerful, you know. I forget things a lot. You said it, not me. So anyway, I explained everything about how the tyrant dragon Rex had come to be freed from the sealing stone. Then I started telling her about myself. I told her how I'd been summoned, then framed and discriminated against. I told her about all the major events that had happened up until now. Phew. Victoria sighed deeply. What? I just get exhausted when I hear of the stupid things the heroes are occupying themselves with. considering that the waves of destruction are what they should be focusing on. It's not me, it's them. I don't care about that. I just have to carry out the task entrusted to me by my old master. The hero. Huh. From my perspective, the little fights between humans and demi-humans are irrelevant. The world does not exist just for people. Even still, I cannot stand to see the heroes quarrel when the heroes fight. I can't achieve what my master entrusted to me. And what is that? I guess she meant that a hero from the past had asked her to do something based on what she'd just said. I guess I couldn't expect Victoria to intervene in the battle between humans and demi-humans anytime soon. It sounds like you're saying you don't plan on teaming up, but that you feel like you have to help me because I'm a hero. That's right. Both the humans and I are in the midst of a very long conflict. A long time ago I decided not to participate. I decided that I would only associate with my tribe, the Philolials. What would a long-living monster like this Philolial think of humans? How would she use them? For convenience? No, if there was a stronger power, a power they couldn't understand, they'd try to get rid of it. At first they might try worshipping it or something. Could it be that she'd grown tired of authority and renounced the world so that she could live with their Philolials in the woods? She might pretend to be a normal Philolial and just travel around. Before Melty had fallen asleep, she kept talking about how she'd met Victoria before. She was clearly very proud of herself. It sounded like Victoria was standing back to watch the way that normal Philolials interacted with humans. Something like that anyway. Do the four holy heroes know about the hourglasses? I've been covering the area entrusted to me, but the four heroes aren't doing their part elsewhere. Hourglasses? I know about those. Then why aren't you participating in the waves? What was going on? I was getting a bad feeling, a strong one. I knew that there were dragon hourglasses in other countries too. Could it be? Was she saying that waves in other countries came at different times? What are you talking about? All I knew was that the waves came about once every month. If they were happening all over the world, I don't think I'd be able to do much about that. You'd think that the other countries would try to build up their defenses, so that they wouldn't need to depend on the heroes for protection. Oh well, I assumed that one of the past heroes must have asked Victoria to see to that. But now she was upset that the summoned heroes weren't fully devoting their energies to battling the waves. I'm not like the other heroes. I may have been summoned here, but I don't know anything about anything. No one explained anything to me. I just found out there were hourglasses in other places the other day. Very well, I understand. I have another question. What? I feel an ominous power coming from the shield. Have you used the curse series? You sure know your stuff. She really was the stuff of legends. She even knew about the curse series. She knew about the Shield of Rage. I understand that the curse series is very powerful, but it asks for much in return. Eventually it will consume you. You mustn't use it. But there are battles I cannot win without using it. I've been able to control it so far, so I think I'm okay. It was true. There had been a number of battles that I wouldn't have been able to win if I hadn't used the Shield of Rage. She was right that it asked for a lot in return, but I figured I'd be all right if I was able to control it. As long as Raftalia was with me, I should be able to fight off my rage. Are you sure? Yeah. Victoria reached out and touched my shield. She shut her eyes. The cursed shield will, one day, overpower the shield hero's strength. The dragon's consciousness entered the shield when its core was absorbed. It must not be used near the person that killed the dragon, or the rage will become too powerful to control. The Shield of Rage had grown stronger after absorbing the dragon's core. Did that mean that it absorbed the dragon's anger too? If that was why the shield had grown so powerful, then who was the person that it hated? Who was the person that had killed it? Could it be Ren? The sword hero had killed the dragon, so what Victoria was saying was that I shouldn't use the Shield of Rage when Ren was around. That, if I did, the power would get out of control. I had fought with Ren recently, but I'd maintained plenty of distance, and Ren hadn't really been trying to fight me anyway. Was that why nothing had happened? Or could it be that the shield had tried to take over, but it wasn't powerful enough to control me? But if I want to survive the battles to come, I might have to use it. I understood that it was dangerous, but if I wasn't able to protect people without using it, then what choice did I really have? After the waves ended and the world was restored to peace, I planned on going back to my own world. It was easy to say that the shield was dangerous and that I shouldn't use it, but there were times when I had no choice. Very well, allow me to change the subject. It doesn't look like you agree with me. She nodded. I guess she didn't agree but was ready to move the conversation to the next topic. The world is in great turmoil because of the waves. Why are the heroes fighting among themselves? It's not my fault. It's them. And the country. They framed me and are discriminating against me. I've heard the basics. They are irrelevant. The heroes do not have time to spend on such trivial matters. Such high ideals. I've been charged with the protection of the world, but I cannot do it alone. I cannot do it without the heroes. After all the power she'd just showed off, was she sure she couldn't save the world from the waves? From what I'd seen, she was already much more powerful than Itsuki, Ren, or Motoyasu. She still wasn't powerful enough to save the world, or maybe she was saying that she wouldn't be able to do so forever. Did that mean that the heroes could still become much more powerful? More powerful than she already was? I guess they were still heroes, even if they were rotten to the core. If the heroes weren't inherently useful, I suppose these countries wouldn't go through all the trouble of summoning them from another world. Honestly, the affairs of humans do not concern me. How they fight, what they fight, but the heroes are different. Why? Victoria silently shook her head. It happened. So long ago that I can't really remember. All I remember is that I cannot permit the heroes to fight among themselves. She forgot the very thing she is so upset about. Well, she was a Philolial, after all. I couldn't expect her to be some kind of genius with a photographic memory. Just look at Philo. But she still remembered it. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something felt very wrong. I had felt a strange pressure coming from Victoria for a little while. Something powerful, something aggressive. It sent shivers down my spine. I remember, I was told, if the heroes ever start to fight among themselves, then, for the good of the world, I am to dispose of them so that new heroes may be summoned. There it was. That's what she'd wanted to tell me. She was saying that if I didn't play nice with the other heroes, she'd kill us all. That was the only way to defeat the waves. That's what the legendary Philolial had to say. There must be a good reason. It must have been an order from one of the heroes from the past. But it's not my fault. They refused to listen to reason. They refused to play nice. There's nothing I can do about it. Yes, bitch framed me, trash arrested and discriminated against me, and the other heroes turned on me without even considering my side of the story. There was nothing I could do about any of them. And now, after I'd raised all that money and earned so many people's trust, now they framed me for the abduction of Princess Melty and sent assassins to murder us. And Victoria wants us to get along? All I could do was get Melty to her mother. That would deal a fatal blow to the Church of the Three Heroes, and then I'd find sanctuary in another country when it all blew over. Be friends with the other heroes? Impossible. Well, Victoria sighed, as if she were giving up. Then fire came into her eyes. Then I suppose there is no avoiding it. She stepped back, then walked off into the night. It was a strange way to end the conversation. I didn't like where this was heading. I doubt she would just walk her off and leave us alone. But there was no way I could depend on the other heroes. It was impossible. Chapter 5, Philo versus Victoria. It was hot. Gah. I could hear a bunch of Philolials calling out in unison, and my body felt warm and constricted. When I opened my eyes, I realized I was completely surrounded by Philolials vying to get near me. What's going on? Hey, master is mine. Philo was greedily pushing the other Philolials out of the way in an effort to keep me all to herself. Oh, come on. When I finally came to my senses, I realized it was around noon. If I started cooking and relaxing, would this day end up just like last night had? Hey, is it true that you fought with the legendary Griffin King? Yup, I did, to be precise. It was actually a monster that a human made by changing normal griffins. He made so many of them that all the flying Philolials disappeared. The sky was filled with flocks of flying griffins. Okay, but did you defeat the Dragon King? I did. I ripped him to shreds, but he kept regenerating. That made the fight difficult. Wow. Hey, is it true that the legendary holy sword rests in the Philolial Sanctuary? There's a holy sword, but I don't know about a legendary sword. I don't think there is anything like that, though some of the old heroes' weapons are still here. Melty's eyes were sparkling again, and she was shooting questions like a machine gun at Victoria. At the same time, Philo stood back and watched. She was clearly jealous. It was a funny scene. I hope their friendship could survive it. Okay, we're done resting now. What should we do? I ate a light meal and turned to Victoria. We really didn't have time to stand around and smell the flowers, or to eat them. I figured that Victoria was probably powerful enough to teleport us all to wherever the Queen was. I'd have to find a way to convince her to help us though. Okay. Now then. Victoria rose to her feet and began to cast a spell on Melty. The wind rose and formed a sort of cage around her. What's this? Melty grabbed the bars and tried to escape, but they were sharp and cut her hand. A little blood trickled over her finger. What are you doing? Philo was glaring angrily at Victoria. Meltan, you'll have to be my hostage for now. Why? Victoria didn't answer but continued to glare at us. The air was crackling with tension. Was this the continuation of what she'd been talking about last night? Was she going to kill us? And then go kill the other heroes too? We should probably assume so. Melty. Raftalia shouted for Melty. Damn. Did we have to fight that giant Philolial here? I couldn't imagine a way that we could win. The area was filled with a threatening atmosphere, but it wasn't coming from me. What choice did I have but to use the Shield of Rage? You mustn't use the cursed power. Light appeared around my shield. Due to interference, the shield may not be changed. Appeared in my field of vision. It was the same thing that had occurred the day before. Please listen to me. Why should I listen to someone behaving as you are? If you refuse to listen, I'll have no choice but to kill the rest of the heroes. She probably could do it. She was considerably more powerful than we were, considering that we hadn't been able to do any real damage to the tyrant Dragon Rex. Despite how powerful the beast had been, Victoria had defeated it without breaking a sweat, and now we had to fight her? We'd lose. There's no way we'll all just get along. What are you talking about? Last night this girl said that she would kill us all if the heroes didn't start working together. Reconcile with the other heroes? I'm not sure that is possible. Raftalia knit her brow and thought for a moment. Did Victoria even understand what we were saying? Wouldn't it be more rude to lie and say that we'd all just be friends? Very well then. Victoria raised her index finger and leveled it at Philo. Then I demand a duel with the Philolial you raised. If she is strong enough then I will release Melty, and offer you a postponement. What's that supposed to mean? You'll figure it out. What did she want from me? I will battle in my current form. Philo, I ask that you also fight me in this form. They had to fight in human form? Philo might stand a chance after all. Had they fought in their true forms, Philo didn't stand a chance. But if they were both humans, maybe Philo could win. Luckily enough, we had a weapon that Philo could use when she was in human form. Okay. Philo reached behind the wings on her back and produced the power gloves. The old guy who ran the weapon shop had originally made them for me so that I could pull the carriage if I needed to. But Philo's magic had turned them into something more like claws. They'd served us well the last time we'd gotten into a scuffle with Motoyasu. And yet, hey, don't just start whenever you want. Yes, Philo, you should do as Mr. Nofumi says. But Mel, if you don't fight, then everyone will die. We don't really have a choice. Damn. It sure seemed like Victoria was planning on making the first move. It made me very anxious to think that all I could do was stand back and watch. She might have been planning to defeat Philo, then turn to us and kill us next. I don't think I'd be able to stop her. We didn't have any other choice. Fine. Then let us begin. Victoria raised her hand, and a wall formed from wind appeared between them and the rest of us, partitioned off on their own. Victoria and Philo stood in a ring of sorts. You must remain in your human form inside this ring. The rules may not be broken. I'll save Mel. I won't lose to Victoria. I was very anxious about standing back and watching the fight. If it looked like Philo was in trouble, I'd break the rules and interfere. Here I come. Philo raised her gloves and closed her eyes in concentration. The gloves morphed into claws, and she brandished them before rushing at Victoria. Yeah. Philo was the first to attack. She jumped into the air and spun to kick Victoria in the stomach. Dull. Victoria raised a hand and easily stopped the kick. Whoa. Philo spun back from the blocked attack, but Victoria was there behind her, delivering punches, one after the other. Philo was managing to avoid them. Then the ground shook. Victoria had slammed the soles of her feet into the ground and formed a crater around herself. How powerful was this girl? You can do it, Philo. Melty shouted from the interior of her cage. I'm not losing. Philo turned back to Victoria and swiped at her with the claws. At the same moment, Philo appeared to blur. Too slow. Clang. There was a reverberating bang, but Philo had managed to dodge the attack with a deft backbend. What? Too slow. Ugh. Philo groaned in a voice she rarely used. She's so fast, but I'm not gonna lose. Philo straightened her back and crossed her arms before rushing forward. Was she already using her best attack? Haiku. Suddenly Philo was a blur, and the air was filled with the reverberations of quick connecting attacks. I told you. Too slow. Victoria slowly raised and lowered her arms. Then she lightly spun one of them in a circle. That was all she'd done. But, Philo was flipping backwards through the air. Philo twisted, and the wings on her back opened. They filled with air, and she landed lightly on her feet. You blocked my best attack. Mel is your friend, isn't she? If you don't give me all you've got. Victoria stood there with both her hands on her hips, taunting Philo. She looked like she was disappointed in Philo's performance. Suddenly Melty's cage shrunk. It was now pressing in on all sides. What? Melty squirmed and hunched her shoulders to keep the bars from cutting into her. Philo watched in horror, and something snapped. Mel, Philo's wings flew open, and she held her claws out at Victoria. She attacked. Victoria did not move. She didn't dodge the attack or attempt to defend herself. Sparks flew when the attack connected, but she remained unharmed. That was impressive. Was she strong enough to ignore Philo's attacks? What could I say? Philo had the highest attack of anyone in our party, by far. If Victoria could just play with her like this, she must have had a great deal of experience. I wondered what level she was. Then take this. Victoria curled her fingers into a fist and swung a counterattack at Philo. It didn't connect. It didn't even brush her, but Philo's clothes were apparently torn by it. I don't think magic clothing like that can protect you. She went on pummeling, and now the attacks seemed to be connecting. Damn it. I hated that I couldn't interfere. What did she mean by magic clothing? That's right. Philo's clothing had been made at a magic shop. They formed Philo's own magic into threads, and then they used the material to make her clothing. That must be what she meant. Magic clothing was clothing made of magic. Victoria raised her hands, and suddenly they were topped with glowing claws. She began to swipe at Philo with them. They left trails of light as they moved through the air. Philo ducked under one of the glowing parabolas. It brushed the top of her head. That would have hit had you been in filial form. Victoria calmly explained. The attack had been so quick that there had been no hope of dodging it, and it was a magic attack. I'm not losing. Philo once again began to move her arms up and down. I'm the source of all power. Hear my words and do as I say. Produce a tornado of wind and carry her away. White tornado. A howling tornado erupted from Philo's hands and flew towards Victoria. But, I'm the source of all power. Hear my words and do as I say. Render her tornado ineffective. Auntie's white tornado. There was a loud clang, and something seemed to enclose Philo. The magic tornado that Philo had produced vanished as though it had never been there at all. Interruption magic. Let's see. Yeah, I think the beginning book on magic I had mentioned something like that. Magic interruption. Yes, I think it said that it was possible in theory. but that it depended on your ability to understand the nature of your opponent, which required great stores of strength. Apparently it worked by analyzing and understanding the pattern inherent in the system of magic casing. Once the pattern was perceived, you had to send out the opposite pattern very quickly. Higher level spells took longer to cast, and therefore were easier to block, but using magic interruption on mid-level magic was supposed to be very difficult. I'm not losing. Resolute, Philo ran for Victoria, but how could she expect this attack to be any different than her previous attempts? Victoria had said that Philo's clothes were magic. This was about defense. Defense was supposed to be my specialty. Philo's clothes were originally made out of magic. Focusing magic could restore them. If so, then that meant... Wait, Philo. What is it, Master? I'm busy right now. Use your magic to repair your clothing. Focus your magic on your clothes. It's the only way. Okay. Philo jumped back to get some distance before holding out her hands and focusing on her clothes. They began to repair themselves. Then they started to glow faintly. I had a feeling that this would raise her defense while she was in human form. Victoria ran at Philo and started to punch at her. Victoria's punch was strong enough to shake the earth, but Philo had blocked it with her outstretched hands. So strong. But I wondered, would she have been able to bear the brunt of the attack if she hadn't focused her magic into her clothing? Philo took the brunt of the attack, then knocked Victoria's arm away before rushing forward. Victoria was open. Philo lunged with the claws. The wind seemed to vibrate. She must have been raising her speed higher. She threw the weight of her whole body behind the attack, and it connected, or so I thought, but weak. There was a small shower of sparks, but other than that, Victoria appeared unfazed. I knew it. There was no way to get through her defenses. This wasn't good. What if Philo lost? What should I do? Philo kept looking over at me. I didn't have any more advice for her though. That's what I thought anyway, but she was actually looking to Melty, then me, then back to Melty. So that was her plan. I snuck over to Melty's cage and reached out to touch it. There was a crashing sound as the blades of wind attempted to cut into me, but my defense was high enough to endure it. Philo must have wanted me to break the cage and end the fight, and she was right. If Victoria was so much stronger than Philo, then there was no chance of victory. Melty. No Fumi. Don't move. I reached my arm inside of the case and tried to break it, but then, an incredibly strong wind blew up from beneath me, and I went flying. I do not like cheetahs. Suddenly a tornado appeared and crashed into my torso. It felt like I'd been punched in the gut, and I flew backwards. Did she just break through my defenses, Mr. No Fumi? I fell to the ground in pain, and my vision warped. Damn. I looked down to see my armor dented. I was bleeding. If I didn't focus and cast some restorative magic, I'd be in real trouble. The armor could repair itself. But damn it, Master. Stay focused. Mew. Can you fight after you've used your magic? I can. Reckless. Let's finish this. Victoria's wings opened and pointed to the sky. She paused and took a deliberate breath. Something was flying around us. It looked like she was gathering the magical elements to herself. What couldn't she do? I wished I could do the same thing, but I could barely manage to pull off a simple magic spell. Still, I guess the best way to improve was to copy someone that could do it. It was something like stealing the contents of another person's brain, though if you really wanted to take it far, what were schools, if not constantly copying people from the past? Basically all of our accomplishments were nothing more than that. Copying other people's successes. Yeah, someday I'd be strong enough to copy what Victoria was doing. When I could, I'd make a point to learn it. I can do that too. Philo copied Victoria, and she began to gather magic to herself. Too slow. The problem was that Victoria had already gathered all the magic up. Victoria rushed Philo and pummeled her with her fists. Mew-coo. But Philo's arms were crossed, and Victoria hadn't yet broken through her defenses. Victoria jumped back and then twisted. She seemed to have recovered enough of her magic. She broke her concentration and moved into her next attack. Higher. Philo moved her wings up and down. She ducked down low, spread her wings, and held her claws forward. She began to shoot forward, carried on a strong current of wind. It was readily apparent to any observer that her magic was greatly concentrated. It must have been Philo's strongest attack. There were too many preparations necessary. I didn't think she could use it in battle. Kiwiku. Philo was flying at Victoria like a bullet. Her claws were out in front. She was flying just a hair over the ground, and spinning in the air. It was the fastest I'd ever seen her move. How to describe it? It was like the final attack for a flying robot in a strategy game. Hey! Victoria's eyes widened in surprise. Victoria's clothes were cut slightly, ever so slightly. They were covered in fine cuts. Then Philo's claws connected with Victoria's face. I couldn't believe it, but there was a scratch on Victoria's cheek. A drop of blood ran down Victoria's cheek. Victoria looked at the blood that Philo had torn from her face. She looked at where it fell. She smiled. That was when I noticed. I looked over at Raftalia, and she nodded. Victoria was just playing with us. She wanted to see how Philo would react when faced with an opponent much stronger than herself. That's why she smiled when she was hit with such an unexpected attack. The legendary Philolial. The description seemed to fit. Philo turned her nose up. She knew there was no way to win. We'd known that the battle was not going to be simple, but we hadn't even decided the victor yet. Mew. Philo grunted. At first I thought she was dissatisfied, but now she looked irritated. Is it my turn now? Victoria stepped forward and sent a series of quick attacks flying at Philo. She was so fast. She'd been faster than Philo up until this point anyway, but now she was moving even quicker. She wasn't moving so fast that she was invisible, like when using Haikyuiku, but she was a blur, never where you looked for her. Philo couldn't block the attacks, and she flew through the air, but before she landed, Victoria was already there. She looked up at the falling Philo, and kicked her hard, sending her flying back to where she'd come from. Then Victoria settled herself. She looked at Philo, waiting for the next move. Philo held her hand against where she ached, and magical light appeared there. She must have been using restorative magic, as her wounds were healing before our eyes. But she wasn't very powerful anymore. She wasn't able to heal herself back to normal, only until she wasn't in immediate danger. Philo was very weak. She once again began to gather magic to herself. Look at me now. Philo was done healing herself. Then she was on her feet and rushing at Victoria. Maybe I was imagining it. No, I wasn't. Philo was moving much faster than she had been up until now. Philo gathered power into her claws, then copied the attack that Victoria had just used. After 3 attacks, the wall of wind that Victoria had made appeared to grow weak. It was shaking. Is that all you've got? I'd noticed it for a little while now, but Philo seemed to be learning from, and copying exactly, all of Victoria's attacks. No, Victoria was teaching her. She just hadn't been holding back at all, so it took a while to notice. Yes, it was all training. It felt like Victoria wanted to train Philo. She wanted to train her so badly that she didn't care if Philo died in the process. Better hurry up. Meltner's in danger. Victoria held a hand out in Melty's direction. The cage grew smaller around her, and the bars were slicing the ends of her hair. Kaya, Mel, Philo opened her wings and used the bullet attack again. She flew at Victoria, but she was even faster this time. Well, this is the end of the test. Do your best to stick it out. Victoria used both of her hands to block Philo's attack. When Philo spun away to recover, Victoria planted a kick to her side. She went flying all the way to the cage made of wind, which she slammed into and kept flying. Rolling along the ground, she came to rest finally, like a beaten rag doll. I ran to where she fell, but Philo held out her hand to stop me, and she rose on her shaking legs. I'm not losing. She didn't want my help, as if receiving help would disqualify her from the duel. She was shaking badly, but she took a step forward. She looked so weak. It was like she could fall over at any moment. She wanted to win so badly that she refused to accept defeat. Philo, if you lose then we can't get Mel back. Philo, it's okay. It's okay. No, I'm going to protect you, Mel. Philo tottered over to where Vittoria stood. The power gloves had lost their claws, but she curled them into fists and punched at Vittoria anyway. Yeah. But the attack was very weak, but her willpower was strong. Philo's fist connected with Vittoria's stomach, but it wasn't enough to hurt her. Yes, that's okay, that's enough. Philo fell, but Vittoria rushed forward and hugged her. The cage of wind that had been holding Melty vanished. Philo. Mel. She's okay. She'll be all right. Vittoria began to cast a spell on Philo. Before our eyes, Philo's wounds began to heal, and all the tears in her clothing were mended. Huh? Philo quickly bat Vittoria's hand away and resumed her fighting posture. It's over. It is not over. I have to protect Mel. I know, but Melton is okay. Look. Vittoria motioned for Melty to come over. Melty looked very carefully at Vittoria before slinking over to stand by Philo. Do you understand? The test is over. Test? Just a little one. I have my own situations to deal with also. Oh yeah? Philo didn't immediately trust her but turned her head to the side as she listened to Vittoria. They'd just been locked in battle, but all the tension seemed to have evaporated. Philo, she was just testing you. Raftalia and I walked closer and tried to explain. Yes, it was a test, but I did truly intend to do as I'd said if she didn't come through. Vittoria explained simply. I didn't know why she felt like she had to do this, but, because of the fight with Vittoria, Philo had learned some great skills for fighting in human form. Philo, you have to think about your opponent. If you fight against humans when you are in filial form, it's like fighting with a giant target on your back. Really? It was true that Philo was very large in her filial form. Even if she could move very quickly, it made for a bigger target when facing a powerful enemy. Also, when she fought in her filial form, she basically had to make all of her attacks into kicks. It wasn't that she couldn't use magic or rush attacks, but it would be best to think about what kind of opponent she was facing. Vittoria was trying to get Philo to notice that there were other ways to fight. It would be useful to switch tactics in the middle of a fight anyway. It could confuse the enemy. So basically, Vittoria told Philo that she should stay flexible about her options, and she taught her some new moves. This is proof that you have passed my test, Vittoria said, and pulled out a tiara. She gave it to Philo. What? What's this? It's your reward for passing my test. Now lower your head. Philo, you're supposed to go like this. Melty grabbed Philo's sleeve and pulled her down into a bow. Would you look at that? Melty was acting very princess-like for a change. Like this? Yes, that's it. Philo was bowing before Vittoria, who placed the tiara on her head. Philo, you will be my heir. What's that? It means that you will be the next great queen of the Filials. Oh, Philo, good for you. Melty was so excited she jumped up and down. Philo didn't seem so excited herself. Suddenly the tiara on Philo's head twinkled and shinned. It sent light out in all directions, and then, ping, a single cowlick appeared on Philo's head. One strand of hair stuck straight up. Raftalia and I were both silent. Was that some kind of prize, huh? Philo, you're so cute. Melty was very excited and was practically dancing in place. But Philo didn't seem to understand what was happening. Melty hadn't noticed. Wait a second. I considered myself a real otaku. Did that mean I was supposed to get excited by this cowlick? Nope. I wasn't feeling it. What happened? Well, I pointed to Philo's head, and Philo herself followed my gaze. She reached up and, what's that? There's something weird on my head. Philo screamed and nearly jumped. She grabbed the clump of hair and, rip, WH? She pulled it right off. Philo was really something. It looked like it must have really hurt. Ouch. It must have hurt, but Philo seemed proud of herself for getting rid of it. Boing. But after she'd torn it off, another strand of hair popped up to take its place. Another one? What? Philo's eyes filled with tears as, time and time again, she ripped the cowlicks off of her head. A new one always popped up to take its place though, and so she eventually gave up and hung her head. It was a weird little cowlick. It'll only keep growing back, so you'd better give up. The more you grow, the more cowlicks you'll have. What? But I don't want. Philo was looking at the cowlicks on Victoria's head. What did the legendary Philolial have in mind by giving something like that to Philo? I decided to have a look at Philo's status screen. Her stats had improved. It seemed like the tiara had conferred some abilities and status improvements, considering that, for the time being anyway, Philo had maxed out her level up potential. It was a good reward. And for the shield hero. Huh? I get something too? Victoria pointed in my direction, then curled her finger up and beckoned for me to come over. Wait a second. If I walked over there, was she going to give me cowlicks too? I don't need a new hairstyle. Hairstyle? I didn't explain further. It would only cause a fuss if I did. It's better than that, and it will heal your wounds. Well, then. I didn't know what she was going to give me, but I hoped it wasn't anything too weird. I probably couldn't have refused anyway, so I walked over to her. She reached out and touched my torso, healing my wounds. I hadn't been able to completely heal them, so there had been a dull pain in the area. She took the pain away. Show me your shield. She pointed to the shield and motioned for me to hold it up. Like this? I held the shield up. Victoria pulled out her cowlick and held it up to the center of the shield. The shield immediately reacted and absorbed the hair. Philolial series forcibly unlocked. Forcibly unlocked. I checked the tree, and there was a Philolial shield glowing on it. It had a bunch of equip bonuses that all seemed to benefit Philolials, like power and growth adjustment, large, medium, small, detailed growth stat adjustment, large, medium, small, and others. One that immediately jumped out at me was called ability while riding, large, medium, small. It must have meant that Philo would fight better with someone riding on her back. Still, my level wasn't high enough to use most of the shield's abilities. Luckily the shield was unlocked, so if I just met the requirements I'd be able to use its powers. It looked like the requirements had been met to unlock any shield related to Philolials. Thank you. You are welcome. However, I still have something I would like to discuss with you. What's that? I'd rather talk in private. This was becoming a rather strange reward. Hey, did this mean that all the Philolial's powers were concentrated into those cowlicks? Philo couldn't level up anymore, at least for now, so I suppose it was a good thing. Melty was hesitant, and somewhat embarrassed, to speak to Victoria. What? That was just to test Philo, right? You're in apostrophe T. using me? Of course not. Isn't there anything you want, Melton? Can you become a really big Philolial and let me ride on your head? Oddly engaged and passionate, Melty made her request. Very well. Victoria seemed a little put out, but as she pat Melty on the head, she started to grow larger. Then she smiled deeply. Wow. Then, just as she'd promised, she set Melty onto her head. It's so high up here. Melty was very excited. Shield hero, please back up a little. Okay. I stepped back as I was asked, and Victoria soon grew to be about 18 meters tall. Just how big could she get? She was like a building. Wow, wow. Melty's voice came down on the wind. Was it okay to take her so far from the ground? But seriously, just how big could she get? Or maybe that was her real size, and she had just transformed to match our size. Wow. Melty seemed very relaxed. It's like a dream. Too bad it's not. Philo was powerful enough to defeat a dragon, and that girl had used her like a toy. That wasn't a good sign. Now then, the day has only just started. I'd like for you all to get a little more rest. Sure, if you'll take us to where we want to go later. We'll talk about that later. For the time being, just try to relax. My friends here also extend their greetings. Gah. What? Celebrate the birth of a new queen? You mean me? Congratulations, Philo. Ha, look how happy the Philolials are. The other Philolials all crowded around Philo and lifted her up. Me? They had picked up Raftalia as well. What was going on? We were suddenly very popular. We spent the rest of the day with the Philolials. It was a festival-like atmosphere, so there we were in seclusion. But once we left, how long would it be until the rest of the world believed in us too? Chapter 6. The bird god's peace. The whole day passed like a dream, and before long, night fell. Raftalia, Philo, and Melty all fell asleep in a huge nest that the Philolials had prepared for them. Just like the night before, Victoria stayed up to speak with me privately. What is it? About what we discussed last night. Damn, you're persistent. What's impossible is impossible. This morning she'd been serious about trying to kill us though. I realized that it was thanks to Philo's efforts that we made it out of that one. But why was she so powerful? How did she get strong enough to fling Philo around like she was a doll? She was strong enough to take on all of the heroes at once. Did you really try to be friends with them? Did you try? I didn't answer immediately. If I didn't think about my answer, she might kill me. Motoyasu had made up his mind about me. I wasn't sure what Ren or Itsuki thought. Since the run-in we had over Melty, we hadn't met again. I had no way of knowing where they were. But I remember that when we last left them, they seemed to have some suspicions about what I'd been accused of. Did you try to clear your name? She had noticed that I hadn't really done anything, especially concerning the rape accusation Bitch had made. I had given priority to my anger because I really believed there was no chance of anyone believing me. I told them that I had been framed, and they didn't believe me. That's why I didn't believe them. But if I had been able to show them proof, would that have changed their minds? We weren't close enough to sit down for a chat. They knew everything about this world, and they knew that I didn't. But they still sent me out on my own and made no attempt to help me. Why should I go to them? All they wanted to do was play in their world and act all badass. How was I supposed to know what they were thinking? I'd thought about it before. I tried to imagine what Ren was thinking. He knew that everyone was freaking out because I'd been accused of raping Bitch. Ren didn't know much about Bitch, but he knew that she was beautiful. Who should he believe? The man accused of the crime? Of the woman who claims to be the victim? If I were him, and I really didn't know anything about either of them, I'd have to side with the woman who claimed to be the victim. It was similar to things I'd heard about back in my own world. On a commuter train one day, a woman grabbed a man's arm and shouted, "This man touched me." Even if he hadn't touched her, everyone on the train would immediately look at him differently, suspiciously. Even if he could prove that he was being framed, the man's social position would be forever damaged. What Bitch had done to me was similar to that. Sigh. My anger was starting to subside, ever so slightly. Just as I didn't know anything about Ren or Itsuki, they didn't know anything about me. The same was true of Motoyasu. Well, Motoyasu clearly only thought about women. I felt like I had realized something important. If Ren and the others were looking into what had happened, then it might be worth it to try and speak with them. If we ran into each other, that is, well, I'd try and talk the next time I saw them. If everything went well, we might be able to make some superficial amends. Of course, amends wouldn't be possible until Bitch and Trash had been punished. Do you remember our previous conversation? Where should I take you after we leave this place? Yeah. I was planning on dropping you off somewhere near the Holy Heroes. You're coming too, right? If she was as powerful as she seemed to be, she could probably help clear up the misunderstanding. Her chief concern was that the heroes work together. Considering that, it seemed like a fair request. I will not intrude on your affairs any longer. Please show me that there is a reason for me to care about you. Very self-satisfied, aren't you? That's the problem. I haven't found a reason to value the current heroes. The only one of you I've met that has potential is Philo. Prove me wrong. She clearly considered herself above me, but if she thought that she was doing it for the good of the world, then she really might kill the heroes for their infighting. I couldn't exactly say she was mistaken, but I still had the feeling that she wasn't going to save the world by knocking off people that were fighting with each other. Actually, maybe I, or not I, but us. The heroes. Maybe we were wrong about how serious the threat was. Besides, I have plenty of things to keep me busy. Like what? Like saving the world from the waves. It's not like the waves only come to places where people live. Are there hourglasses outside of population centers? Victoria nodded. I'd rather have not known that. So it wasn't just civilization that was threatened? I've been put in charge of those areas. I'd love for you to help me, but you need to grow stronger first. So she meant that she'd gone out of her way to meet us and test us. While she had the time to do so, she wanted to see if we were strong enough to face what was coming. If we weren't, she'd kill us. If you can, have a real conversation with them. The world doesn't have time for the petty squabbles of heroes. You make it sound like the heroes are always fighting. I've seen it happen many times. Fine, I have to do all I can to patch up the relationship, right? There's more. What? If even one of the heroes is missing when the waves come, the waves will grow stronger. If that is what's happening, then the heroes must be killed so that new ones may be summoned. It must happen for the sake of the world. Damn, I didn't want to know that either. That meant that the danger grew worse if any of the heroes died. But if all the heroes died, then new ones could be summoned. What a situation. She was telling us to kiss and make up. But if we didn't, she'd kill us. This filial queen sure knew how to give an obnoxious order. I was lost in my thoughts for a moment, so Victoria stood up and turned back to me. I don't know how many waves it will take, but there will come a time when all the life in the world will be forced to sacrifice something great. The heroes will then be forced to make a decision. I'll be waiting for you then. Decision? Whether you'll fight for the world or for the people. If you can't play nicely with the other heroes and just want to be rid of your purpose, then at least stay alive until then. If you choose to fight for the world, you'll have to make a great sacrifice, but you'll be able to fulfill your purpose. What happens if I choose to fight for people? That's a thorny path. The past heroes wished for it, but it's no longer possible. It is a path you cannot walk alone. You'd never make it. Just how much do you know? Tell me everything. I've already forgotten so much, but I remember one thing. Saving the world and saving humanity are not the same thing. The world and its people were different. From the way she was speaking, it was clear that she was standing on the side of the world. She seemed mostly indifferent to what happened to its people. Then what did it mean to fight for the world? I knew she was referencing the waves, but I couldn't figure the rest out. Regardless, there was a time when she wanted to see us again. It might be after the final wave. I wondered. What would I choose? Even if it was on behalf of people, if I could do something to protect Traftalia and the others, I'd probably choose to help people. So please, try to get along with the other heroes. All I can say is that I will try. I can't say how they will react, but you did give us those rewards. The least I can do is make an effort. She gave Philo a tiara, and me a shield. The least I could do was hear her out. You passed the trial. I have more hope for you than I do for the other heroes. Why? The shield hero who raised the new filial queen can't be all bad. I am though. I'm bad. I just said it without thinking. I mean, I'd bought a little girl as a slave and forced her to fight for me. I certainly wasn't a good person. Victoria sent her gaze to the sky and sighed deeply. Think what you want for now, but don't forget that we are connected through Philo. Had Philo not been able to pass her trial, she would have killed me. She was powerful enough to do it. I'd even been wounded. Fine. Shield hero, I think that you have the strength to fix things with the other heroes, and honestly, they're all just too weak. With how things are now, I won't have to step in to take care of you all. You'll take care of yourselves. Will it be so hard? It will be, and if you have to use that shield. Victoria reached a hand towards my armor. I suddenly felt lighter. The dragon core that had been embedded into my barbarian armor somehow changed. It now appeared like a Taoist yin-yang symbol. Barbarian armor +1, protection of the bird god, defense up, impact resistance, medium, fire resistance, large, wind resistance, large, shadow resistance, large, HP recovery, very small, magic up, medium, agility up, medium, magic defense manufacturing, spiritual contamination resistance, automatic recovery. What's this? It will help you resist the cursed series. Still, it won't keep you safe completely. Don't use the shield if you can avoid it. I'll do what I can, but you shouldn't hold your breath about this or about making up with the other heroes. Please. Victoria flashed the most sincere smile I'd seen yet as she walked over and leaned against me. You're heavy. Get off. But Victoria showed no signs of moving. She kept leaning against me in silence. What was she doing? She looked like a little kid about to burst into tears. Why? It was my first thought. Why? What did she want? Then I thought of reasons. She'd said that a hero had raised her. Where was that hero now? He'd either gone back to his own world, or he'd died a long time ago. Did she think I was like her new parent now? Did she see her old hero in me? There was nothing I could do about it. I ran my hand over her head. When I did, she buried her head against my shoulder and hugged me. It seemed like the only reason she had to live was the promise she'd made to the hero in the past. Was that all she had? She'd promised to protect the world. How many years had it been? Thinking on how long she'd worked for the world, I felt like the least I could do was accept her request. In all her years, how many people had she met and worked with in this world? She must have fallen into disappointment and desperation many times. Was that why she didn't trust anyone but the heroes? She was a rather clumsy girl. She seemed to be very powerful, but that was probably because she was trying so hard. When a little girl asks you to do something, it's hard to say no. I'd do what I could. Eventually Victoria's breath became deeper, and I realized she'd fallen asleep against my shoulder. Her snores sounded just like Philo's. Someday, after I'd gone, would Philo lean on another hero's shoulder and fall asleep? As I thought about it, my eyelids grew heavy, and soon I was asleep too. Thank you so much. Melty and Philo were waving their arms energetically. Morning came, and Victoria declared that it was probably about time. We hit the road. She motioned for us to ride in the carriage. Once we were all in the carriage, Victoria teleported us back to the field where we'd fought with the tyrant Dragon Rex, and we all disembarked. Were the other heroes nearby? Are the other heroes somewhere nearby? I sensed some kind of reaction nearby. Victoria was staring at the carriage. That wasn't a good sign. A moment passed. Then Victoria transformed into her normal filial form before raising her wings and running away. That was an interesting experience, wasn't it, Mr. Nofumi? Sure was. Okay, Philo. Oh, I forgot to mention that Victoria had given Philo a parting gift. It was a new carriage. It was made of wood, though it wasn't of exceptional quality. Everything was getting really complicated. Why had she put so much on my shoulders? Philo had preferred the carriage that I'd bought, but there was really no choice but to compromise. Philo turned into her filial queen form and started to pull the carriage. Let's go. Okay, yeah. We can do it, right, Philo? We'd gotten far off course, but we were back on it now. We headed for the southwestern border. I didn't think it was going to be this far. We'd arrived at the border. From where we stood we could see a small fort-like structure where guards watched the border from their patrol along the roof. There weren't very many people crossing the border, and there were guards inspecting the contents of large luggage carts. Damn, they're keeping a close watch. Because they are looking for us, right? At least there are fewer guards here than there were up at the northeastern border. That's true. Motoyasu was standing near the border crossing. The fire-spewing demon was with him. I wished he'd go somewhere else. He'd never really listened to me, or so I was thinking when Victoria's words came back to me. Could it be that my own assumptions were preventing us from reconciling? Regardless, Bitch was there too, and there was no way that she would hear me out. Anyway, there didn't seem any way to cross without just charging ahead. I held on to a small hope that maybe they would listen to Philo, Melty, or Raftalia. If we looked for another crossing now, we'd wander for a few days at least, and besides, our goal was right there before us. The main problem was Motoyasu. We'd made it out of all of our scuffles so far. If he wouldn't listen to what we had to say, then we would just have to push through, right? We'd just have to force our way through. Melty, the goal is right there. We have to push through, whatever happens. Still, I'm going to try talking to Motoyasu. I figured she was throwing some kind of hysteric fit, but it was important to make sure we were all on the same page. Okay. Huh? What's that? What's what? I thought you'd tell me not to because it would make us look bad. She turned away and sighed in frustration. If the country is behaving so rashly, then a rash treatment is necessary. I knew what she meant. She was thinking of the nobleman that had wanted us dead so badly he'd release the seal on an ancient monster. He'd burn the country down to get at us. Melty was decisive. That was good. Forcing our way over the border would probably result in less destruction than continuing to run. Okay, let's move. Are you all ready? Completely. Yup. I'll give it my all. All right. I raised my hand, and Philo threw her weight forward, running full tilt with the carriage. We ran right up to the border crossing. It's the shield demon. Some greeting. I'd been planning on compromising and trying to talk things over, and this is how they said hello. I'd reconsidered my approach after talking through it with Victoria. But had I been wrong? Stop right there. Before the actual crossing there was some kind of mat laid out. It was covered with protruding nails. We'd never get the carriage over it, but Philo didn't show any signs of slowing down. Here they come. Motoyasu leveled his spear in our direction. He was a feminist. He wouldn't raise his spear to Philo. Would he? His spear began to glow. Mine. Okay. Bitch started to cast the spell as Whitefire, Air Strike Javelin, and as mine finished casting her spell, Motoyasu raised his shining spear and threw it at us. Combo skill, Air Strike Fire Lance. A spear made of fire was flying straight for us. Shit. I immediately jumped up onto Philo's back and began to cast my own spell, Air Strike Shield. Second shield. The two air strike shields appeared in the air and stopped Motoyasu's burning lance, but the shields were not able to stop the lance completely. It ricocheted and kept flying for the cart. Philo jumped away from the cart to dodge it. I turned back to see Raftalia and Melty hold hands and leap from the cart just in time. Was Motoyasu flinging skills at us without hesitation now? Besides, what was that? Magic and skills could be combined into combo skills? I guess so. It was like the magic sword. Had he been holding back this whole time? Is that why they hadn't used it up until now? What are you doing? I was planning on trying to talk to him before we ran away, but he'd just run up and started attacking mine. I know. Bitch, the princess, shot to look over at the soldiers. When she did, a magic cage, rippling and crackling with energy, appeared around us. What? What the? What is this? What's happening? It was very large, about 40 meters across. It appeared to be made out of lightning. Was it magic, or was it made from something else? We finally found you. No Fumi. You won't get away this time. Motoyasu. He was looking at us, unmistakably gloating. What was that supposed to mean? His normal nonchalance was gone. No Fumi. This is a magical device called a lightning gauge. Melty looked at the cage and explained its purpose. It is a trap installed over a specific area. It is designed to trap wizards and magic users. The wizards? What's the point of it? It's supposed to keep the targets trapped inside. Now it made sense. They'd seen us escape on Philo's quick feet before, so they wanted to fight in an area that would circumvent that entirely. I can break it, but it will take a little time. What's the normal way to get out? You need the key from the person who set it up. I climbed down from Philo's back and glared at Motoyasu. Are you going to fight? Well, I wanted to discuss things before it came to that, but it's looking like a fight is more likely. Raftalia unsheathed her sword and readied it. Raftalia, you should focus on defense. Stay back if you can. But am I fighting? Yes, if it comes to that. Motoyasu was weak when it came to pretty girls. He had just attacked without hesitation, but I was going to assume that he thought we'd dodge it. Melty, can you focus on breaking the cage? I can try, but I can't make any promises. Okay then, Raftalia, you focus on protecting Melty as she works to break the cage. All right. After I finished assigning everyone their role,